Greetings, namaste, and grüß Gott. Welcome to the Red Chill, your weekly one-stop shop for everything TV, movie, pop culture, and more. And the #2 TV podcast in India. You can find us on all podcast services, social media, and YouTube. We'd appreciate it if you could leave a like, rating, or a comment, as that would help us out enormously as we're trying to grow our channel currently. I'm your host, Root by Root, and with me, my co-host, Han Solo, aka Shabzy.
What's up?
This is Andor, recapped and reviewed, where we will take a deep dive scene by scene and break down the entire episode and give our personal thoughts and our insight. Episode 5, The Axe Forgets, but the Tree Remembers. Although, I would
That's
have
not part
called
of
it,
the line.
what, isn't that what he said?
I know, but that's not actually the title though.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be
Okay.
dramatic.
Okay. Go on. Sorry, my bad.
Anyways, I would have called it actually Everyone Has Their Own Rebellion.
Oh yeah, there you go. But that would be too on the nose though.
Yeah, I feel like it went into the same themes and it worked, and it's just
Yeah.
such a dope line. Well, like I get
Yeah.
the Axe Forgets, it's like it's a reference to a book and all that, but everyone has their own rebellion. What a dope line. And I really feel like it fits for this episode. Everybody had their little own rebellion going on. We will get into that in just a second. Okay, so episode 5, released on October 5th, 2022. Written by Dan Gilroy and directed by Susanna White. Before we get into it and do the recap, why don't you give us your overall thoughts, chaps? What do you think of this week's episode?
I really enjoyed it. I think the show is going in a really good direction, and the way it's building its characters, the way it's building its world, I have really loved it so far. And and yeah, we'll get more into the themes and everything in a little bit.
I have to agree. I really liked it. I thought it was another great episode, and it was what I thought it was going to be, or actually what I hoped it was going to be, which is like, it seems like so far we're getting these 3-episode arcs, and this was the episode 2 kind of episode where it was, again, a deep dive into the characters, moving the plot forward through dialogue and less action. And yeah, I think it still works as a weekly show. It definitely, I can see how people might find it a little bit slow, but I find it adult, and I appreciate it for that. I feel like it's something we haven't really gotten much in Star Wars, and I'm really digging it. It's becoming one of my favorite things in Star Wars, like, definitely, just because it's so its own thing. It doesn't rely so much on all the other properties in Star Wars. It's trying to tell its own story. It's trying to create its own lore. It's like the characters, like, even after this episode, I have to say, like last week, I was saying these characters there, they didn't really seem like main characters or actors that I would see in like a show continuing for a while. But I feel like in this episode specifically, they all stole the show. Where I actually started to feel like I feel like Diego Luna is good, but this was like the first episode where I was like, you're getting outperformed by everyone around you a little bit. We're like, you're good, but I don't know what it is. We're like, yeah, I don't know. Something about his performance stuck out this time. And I don't know if it was because everybody else was so good, or if it was just more, maybe he got a little bit more dialogue and more to do. But yeah, again, overall, I really liked it. And I didn't mind it being a bit slow. I definitely am super excited for the next episode. And I kind of do still, like, I'm back to being like, I wish we would get 3 episodes ago, because it seems like it's a movie, right? Like, they're just taking little movies and cutting them into 3 episodes so far, it seems. Building an overall arc with it, but it's really cool. It's something that, like, I don't know. I don't think we would have gotten in TV long ago, and it's so cool to see now. And yeah, totally down with it. I'm really high on the show, and I cannot wait for next episode. Like I said, it's going to be a good one. After we've seen what they did in episode 3, I can only imagine what this heist is going to be like, and I cannot wait.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, I actually, I really, I'm glad you brought up some of those points because I actually wanted to ask you one question, and that was like, would a person who's never seen Star Wars, anything about Star Wars, and just knows of Star Wars but doesn't know anything about it, would they be able to watch this show and enjoy it to that same level? And will they learn more about, like, a lot about Star Wars as well through the show?
so for the first part of the question, I think this would, I would hope it will work because I'm getting vibes of almost like something like Breaking Bad, or this could be like anything else. It just happens to be a Star Wars show, you know, like the story that's being told could have any kind of backdrop and it would still work. And like I was saying, with the second part of it, it would teach them about Star Wars, but it's actually would teach them stuff that we're learning as well because they're going very much into like their own little world and they're exploring their own little lore. So a lot of it seems like it's references, but actually it's brand new stuff where everyone is just excited to see what is this going to lead into. Like even if it's not right now, like maybe years from now, we'll see like a prison and we're like, oh shit, you know, that's what that was. And yeah, that's why I think this is a great show so far because it is very newcomer friendly that way, because it's very approachable. It's similar to other shows that are trying to be dramas, but on top of that, it's like just great TV. It's little movies. Like how can you not be excited with that? I feel like there's a lot of people when they look at Star Wars, they think it's maybe impenetrable because of how
Mm.
many properties are there, and maybe sometimes it's too fantastical, or like any people who had like thoughts like that about Star Wars before, they can watch this and I feel like they will get something out of it that they might have not gotten from other shows, maybe something they were looking for in other shows.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I think for someone who's like, even for me, like, I enjoyed Star Wars stuff, but I wasn't like fully into it. I haven't seen a lot of the other stuff, and for me, I was just worried about how I would actually really enjoy with all these actual like super side characters like Cassian Andor. Like, no one ever even thought of it or thought of him other than that one movie. But yeah, so far, like the way they've developed it, and like you said, I think to your other point about Diego Luna's performance, I noticed that as well. And I honestly just think that that might be like a language barrier thing where I think because he's like reciting so many lines in English, like I think he's having a hard time trying to act naturally while conveying lines, especially when he's like angry. He uses the same kind of like grunting voice and yeah and it doesn't help that there's so many other characters who are acting so well that he actually starts standing out. And one thing about him I wanted to ask, which I think we'll talk like we'll sprinkle that discussion throughout the episode, was that Diego Luna's performance stands out, but then also we're now 5 episodes into it. His character has just been like blah, like there has literally there's been so many characters introduced and I've learned so much more about them than I have about him. Like I've learned like tiny little things, but there's literally like no like, oh, he's going here, he's going there. He's literally the same person that he was like, and there's been nothing interesting about him other than just like a few things here and there. And yeah, I'm just like, why is he even here? Like why are like, but yeah, we'll get more into that throughout the entire pod.
No, I find it interesting that you're mentioning the language barrier because that's the same thought I had actually,
Mm.
where maybe that's what it was because I remember
Yeah.
that being a thing for Rogue One, and
Yeah.
yeah, in between that's what it felt like, where like he was kind of busier trying to get the line out more than really selling the emotion behind it. And I totally
Yeah.
agree that he's definitely, I had the same thought of him being a very strange protagonist where he's not very approachable, likable, acts very like out of place, and
slyly, and he's like a scoundrel, like you mentioned earlier.
yeah, and I still don't believe half the stuff he says.
Yeah,
There's a very specific moment in this episode where he takes charge and he says something, and I
yeah,
sit there and be like,
yeah,
yeah, how? I don't know. I don't
yeah.
trust him.
I know.
Everything he does, it seems like I don't know his motive. We don't know what
He
he has. No motive. He's there, like literally. He says, "I'm here for the money," but at the same time, it's such a weird thing because he's just thrown into it. He was like torn out of his life because of a mistake he made, and now Luthen pulled him out and just threw him into a completely different situation. And why he is, I guess, only there for the money because he just wants to go away, I guess. But then Luthen
and
was saying that he has a hate for the Empire. Actually, that's
yeah,
why he's there. But then he didn't bring that up. He was just understanding other people's pain. But
yeah.
yeah,
He to me seems like a side character in a movie plot who would always be like a little like kind of like that android from I think Alien or Aliens. I forgot. And you're always like, wait, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Like he's that side character that you're always just wondering like when is he gonna betray them or is he not gonna betray them? But as a protagonist, and now I just thought of one thing where I think what's happening is that, so you mentioned this in one of the earlier pods, was that we are sort of discovering the world of Star Wars from the inside out through Andor's eyes, right? So what I think it is like I don't know if you've read the comic Joker, but obviously this story structure must has been used a lot of times. But in that comic, the way the story is structured is that it's told through the eyes of a guy who becomes the driver of the Joker. And so you get to learn more about the Joker because this is the first time this guy is meeting the Joker. And through the driver's eyes, you, as someone who's never seen him, gets to know more and more and more about the Joker. And so I think it's sort of that same thing where I think we as an audience, where he's just being used as a vehicle into this world of different protagonists and antagonists, but he is just like a side character who's not really a good guy or a bad guy. He's just there just to make like just to drive the story along. Because I
yeah,
can't even till now I can't really think of literally any redeemable quality about him. Like normally with characters like this who are flawed and anti-heroes type of characters, they're it's sprinkled throughout that he's a good guy in small moments. He has literally been like a dickhead to everyone close to him, even Marva. And the only one good thing that he did was that he sort of saved Luthen in that warehouse fight. That for that one when that thing was about to drop on him. That's it. That's the only good thing we've ever seen him do. And even till now, everything he says, it feels like such a big lie. Where I'm like, I don't think you really believe or mean
but
any of that.
and then same time, it's not just lies. It's also you're finding out new skills and like
Mm.
his past, and every time there's a new wrinkle to it where we don't really know this character. To
And he
the
becomes shadier and shadier with all this new information.
exactly because we are wondering what else do we not know. So
Exactly. Yeah.
we've heard he's done some time. He's gone to war. He was a youngling on that planet, and like there's still so much like between him leaving that planet with Marva
Mm.
to where he was on the planet where Luthen picked him up. There's such a
Right.
big gap where it seems like even just like small sections in between, a
Yeah.
few years in between, could have meant drastic, important
Right.
years that have really formed him.
Right.
So
Right.
it really feels like when we met him on that planet with Marva and the one that he
Mm.
ran off with, that was
Marloni.
Maloney. It was really that was not really his life. That was
Yeah,
just like
it just seemed like a small moment in his life, and we were
yeah,
like dropped right into it.
yeah, and that was really not what he was about. He's not a construction worker. He's
Yeah.
not like he is obviously very tactically trained, and he's
Right.
a pretty smart guy. Where, but at the same time, again, what do we know? Like Luthen said he was a cook. He wasn't actually a
Yeah,
soldier,
yeah,
right? But at the same time, he was smart enough to know that how the soldiers need to look when they were marching,
yeah.
or he's smart enough to be able to clock people and their traits, and like there's definitely layers to this guy, which keeps him interesting. I think he has that going for him.
Mm.
I wonder if part of it after this episode, I was wondering if maybe Diego Luna's performance is maybe making the character a little bit harder
Mm.
to like get into.
Interpret.
Yeah.
Mm.
But at the same time, if you're going by the character from Rogue One, even in there, he was a very strange character for like
Yeah,
a movie.
he
Yeah.
seems like the same character that he was in Rogue One. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering what his arc is ever going to be. I mean, we understand his arc at the end of Rogue One, but for this show, like the kind of things we've seen with other characters, it's like the layers we've seen to them. Like he seems so one-dimensional, and they seem like so much more layered and like multi-dimensional. Where it's like you see different actual human emotions, like that. They're not just stiff characters, but we will get more into that. We'll
But I
during the
get what
recap.
you mean because they have announced 2 to 3 seasons. I have to double check again, but it's a few seasons, and the fact that he's at the very beginning, pretty much the character that we've met in Rogue One, is the question of like what is the journey going to be?
Yeah,
What is the growth that he's going to do? And even if there is growth, it would be easier to understand if he was the opposite, like very open, uplifting, and he turns into this grizzled soldier who's lost it all, and that's why he doesn't trust anybody in Rogue One. But the fact that he's already on the shifty side, it's like leaves you wondering of what is his journey actually going to be, and if it's not his, whose journey is it? Like for example, Mothra. I always get her name wrong.
Mon Mothma.
Mothra. But I always think of the Godzilla.
Imagine if Godzilla is part of this universe.
Exactly. I always think of that Mothra. But I think her journey already, just of where she's set up and knowing where she's going to be, that's a really interesting setup. She's going to be a very public leader of the rebellion. And right now she's very deep in this politics and trying to be on the hush hush to see to see where that's going is super interesting because you're already in your head you have to make so many leaps and jumps that you just want to see. It's like what takes her from this position to that, which is missing with Andor.
But and like even like just a small thing about, and then we'll get into our actual thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
But like the thing with even Mon Mothma is that like her stuff, even though we know how she ends up, but her everything about these characters, they have scenes where they seem more interesting. That's what's lacking from Andor's character the most, where it's like I don't even like for so many of them you just care about them just because you spend so much personal time with them doing stuff where there's character growth and progression, but for him there literally is nothing. But yeah, we'll get more into that.
Just last thing, think of it this way. How much character growth was there for the entire squad of the heist crew in this one episode versus 5 episodes that we spent with Andor? Like how much how invested did you get in these new characters that you just met last week and were super standoffish? You didn't learn much. You just were like very sterilely introduced to everybody. And now with one episode, you're like ready to be like, okay, if any of these guys go, it's going to have an effect on us,
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I have a prediction for that already.
Okay, we'll get into that.
But yeah, okay. So those were our overall thoughts. Let's real quick, in case someone wants to just hop into the episode after what we just discussed. I think we kept it pretty spoiler free. What rating would you give it? And would you still suggest this show to newcomers and people just in general should they check this out?
Yeah, so because I have people in my life who know nothing about Star Wars or even care about it and think it's like kiddie junk. So I would love to suggest it to them and see how they really actually feel about it. And actually, yeah. And so last week's episode 4, I gave an 8.9. but that episode had bigger implications to it than just like what the episode was about, especially because it was coming off of a 3 episode and we had that whole debate about that. So this episode is like, I'm just gonna judge it basically just based on the whole episode itself, just the story and everything. And I think I would give it an 8.9.
Nice.
Because I like you just learned so much more about the characters, and now you sort of understand more of the show, and you understand, like you said, the 3 arc thing. I was gonna get to that at the end of the episode, but I know that that's what's gonna happen, and now it starts to make sense slowly by slowly, and I love that it starts off mysteriously where you don't know, but the world and characters and everything builds around it, where slowly by slowly you're filled into little by little more information, and yeah, so that's why.
Right. So I have to cheat a little bit because I feel like I have to give it 2 ratings.
Oh, come on, now you can do that.
Basically, if I have to go by week, if you're watching this, you each episode and then you wait and I watch the next one, I give it an 8.5 because I think it's amazing and it got me really invested. Where I still think last week was such a brilliant play with tension that it worked really well as a solo episode. Where I would say this one got me so excited for the next episode that if I were able to watch the next one right away, I would give this a 9. Just because I wouldn't have the whole like, okay, as a standalone, I feel like you just have me like you just got me like my mouth wet for it. I like I want more right now.
I actually like that they're making us wait for this one.
Yeah.
Because now I know that it's going to be a climax. Like, I'm glad I actually remember, because the biggest subject that our topic of episode 2 was that is this getting too slow? Like, where is this headed? Because we don't know where episode 3 was going to be. To make us wait for 1 week for that, like, now that we know what the story structure is going to be, we know what's going to happen, and we know like it's going to be a climactic episode. And like you said, like, your mouth is wet and you can't wait. And so they've done their job for like building tension, and like you can't wait. Like, your anticipation is going to grow more and more, and when that episode hits, hopefully now it's on the episode's shoulder to like deliver big. If the next episode delivers big like episode 3 did, I think it's like totally worth the wait.
Okay, you convinced me. It's a 9.
There you go. Boom. I'm switching to a 9 as well.
All right, there you go. So
there we go.
Those are our spoiler-free thoughts and our rating. Now we're gonna get real spoilery and go scene by scene, real deep. So if you haven't watched it yet, now's your time. Hit pause, come back. In the meantime, everybody else, let's get this started.
Let's do it. All right. So we're gonna start with first I'll start with some stuff that I just wanted to like talk about, like, and that I didn't mention on last week's episode, so that, and then it sort of carries over into this episode. So I felt like it's kind of, it'll be kind of cool, and some interesting nuggets that I found out during the thing. The number one thing was that we mentioned Nightcrawler comparisons, but Dan Gilroy only wrote this episode, and it's like you said, directed by Susanna White, who did some other stuff. But yeah, so maybe
nothing big that I knew.
Yeah, exactly. She's more of a
like
British.
Nanny McPhee too.
You're right, exactly. Yeah, right. And
a great direction. And amazing.
Yeah, it gave Nightcrawler vibes just from the way the scenes were shot. But like even more of our comparisons were also due to like more to the characters of like Karn and like, or like
I thought the writing was really what like really made me thought of Nightcrawler. The pacing and just the tension. Where with little happening, a lot of tension was still there.
Exactly. And another cool little nugget I found was that we referenced these two things. Was that the first thing was that the first scene of Cyril Karn, when he's introduced and when he's being reprimanded by his officer, we mentioned that he's trying to look like and talk like a stern soldier, and we referenced Kurt Russell Soldier, right? So that movie, the writer of that movie co-wrote Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner. and he mentioned that he intended Soldier to be in the same universe as Blade Runner.
I think I've heard that before.
Right. Okay. So and we've made both those references to the show. So I just thought that was kind of a fun
Oh, they
little nugget.
definitely are referencing other media for sure. That you
Yeah.
can tell.
Yeah.
There were some Easter eggs this episode, which
Right.
were more Star Wars, like that is something that happens in Star Wars all the time. I guess I can mention it while we're doing trivia, but there's the Indiana Jones Easter eggs all over the show,
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yeah, and this time specifically, they had the Sankara eggs or something they're called from Temple of Doom. I don't know if you remember them. They're like these little poles that like glow, and when Luthen is there on the phone, behind him there's like holocron and like the things that the Jedi's and the Sith keep their messages in, although very big. Which is I don't know if they're like a prop or suddenly they have really big ones now too. And then yeah, right next to it there's like Indiana Jones pieces from Temple of Doom. And
Really?
apparently before that they had in Carbonite in one of the scenes they had the whip from Indiana Jones and they had his boots.
Really?
And I think but apparently this is something that has been done in both Indiana Jones and Star Wars. It's a running thing that they've been doing. Like R2D2 and C3PO are in Indiana Jones in like a glyph, and they have the word for carbonite in Italian on a barrel and like stuff like that. And Star Wars had like in Rogue One, they had one of the idols in Dryden Voss's hideout. And yeah, it's just something that they keep doing. So that's kind of nice that they keep that tradition alive. Keep it, like while they're doing their own thing in Star Wars, still doing the Star Wars thing. It's always appreciated.
That's actually kind of cool. They do put a lot of effort into their details. So like
I mean,
it's very cool to know. Yeah.
I have some more stuff. For example, in the kids' room, well, Cyril at one point is looking at the hologram of.
Oh, we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Oh yeah, I'll
So
just mention it when we get there.
if yeah exactly. We will talk about all those things while we're getting there. All right, so that was a fun nugget, and then one thing I just wanted to mention that when I was making the backstory assumption for Cyril Karn, this I left a small little other one out, and I just wanted to read the notes as I wrote because it'll carry over into what the episode turned out to be. So I wrote, dominating mother relationship is perfect. And it feels like the Joker, but instead of wanting to be a stand-up comedian, he wanted to be like a badass soldier. Or maybe he's pushed into it by his mother emasculating him in his growing years, and all this is just insecurities being projected and failing terribly at it. So I wrote that as well as an assumption, and I'm so glad that the episode goes into that and not like, oh, it's just like a regular, like, he's just like following his dad and stuff like that, which also could be true because we still don't know why she slapped him in when she meets him.
I think it's just because he left and he was saying this episode, you could have come visited.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All right. So let's start with the thing. All right. So
here's the recap.
What were some of but also just some of the main themes that were introduced and actually really talked about in this episode. Obviously, you mentioned everyone has their own rebellion. That's like maybe the main thing of the episode. Then 2-3 other ones were leadership. That's heavily used in this, and interpersonal versus intrapersonal office relationships.
Yeah, I think it really was going into the axe forgets, but the tree.
Yeah.
I feel like that was very specifically, I don't remember the character's name, but the one that has a fight with Andor from the squad. Skeen. It's really focusing on his arc where like there are hints of it. But for example, it seems like in the morning he was chopping wood and there's an axe behind him. And it relates also to him and his story with his brother. And I think it was really focusing kind of on that, but also how that relates to Cyril and how he has been hurt by Andor and how actually Andor feels like he's the tree, but while we've been following him, he's also very much the axe, and many people have been
Mm.
hurt, like affected by him, especially Cyril, where it's a
Yeah.
very interesting thing where when they talk about the gun, I wasn't sure if it was the gun from the guy he shot or it was the gun from Cyril. Do you
I
remember?
think it was Cyril.
Yeah, because what that made me think of was he doesn't even know Cyril's name
Yeah.
because the axe forgets, but
Yeah.
Cyril sits there and he's like
Yeah. We'll get into that.
fetishizing about Andor, like he's like obsessing about it,
Yeah.
like so. I think they really were trying to lean into that whole idea.
And another one or two things I noticed was plans not going according to schedule. They mentioned that a couple of times, and obviously feeling scared versus losing your nerves. I like that part as well. All right. So now we get into the recap. And did you notice that maybe I think I usually skip the intro, but this time I think like the opening theme music had
It
a
ch-
little bit of right? It changed, right?
it
Okay,
changes
all
every
right.
time.
Eh,
We talked about that.
okay.
I think it was last episode where we were saying it was sounding like the journey is starting. This time they added a little bit
Mm.
of keys, piano.
They mixed in Cyril's theme music because that's what it
Oh,
sounded like. That's why I was like, that's how I was like, this sounds like Cyril's theme music. And so I
interesting. I
went
didn't
back
catch
to
that.
episode 3 to check that. Yeah,
Okay, that
I
makes.
noticed that right away.
Well, the episode starts on him, I guess.
Exactly. So that's why like and now so we see the first shot of Cyril back in his kid's room, just looking out the window and like he's super sad. And
You see
it
the
kind of reminded
light
me of yeah,
disappearing on his
and
face as he's looking out
exactly.
into the sun. As in,
And it reminded me
yeah,
no, no,
his
sorry, go on, my God.
I was just gonna say it's kind of like metaphorically of like the light of his dreams just fading, and he's
Mm,
going back into that hole of
yeah.
whatever he's living in.
Hmm. And for me it reminded me of like the depressing version of Luke staring in looking up into those twin suns, feeling hopeful for an adventure like in the New Hope.
Yeah, and the
And here
sun
we have
is setting on
yeah,
him.
exactly. Is the sun is setting where I don't know if they were rising at that, but it was like the
Yeah,
whole moment was like him like pining for adventure and feeling hopeful.
yep.
And here's Cyril just like, oh my God, like it's so sad. And yeah. And then we get into the real stuff. My favorite part. I'm gonna wax on about this whole scene for a long time, and then
I
I'll
know
say very
it's.
little throughout the
I was
episode.
also so excited to find out cereal is a real thing in the Star Wars universe, and Cyril is eating cereal,
Cyril
and
is eating
and
cereal.
it's the little like it looks like the Nestle one, not sponsored,
Mm,
when he's holding it up like a little Death Star, and I just
yeah,
like I want to eat that maybe with normal
right.
milk because blue milk looks weird, but honestly, actually, it
It
looks kind of
it,
fun.
it look it looks like cereal milk. Like
I guess,
what
yeah.
like when you eat all the cereal and your cereal is the milk
But
is left with the colored milk.
I love how they're just making these normal things, just
Yeah,
things in Star Wars. Like we've had
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Chinese takeout,
Yeah.
we've had now the cereal, we had sex, casual sex, hookers.
Mm,
And well, this time there was, it looked like a dry cleaner or something. They had like a thing to keep your suit in, which looks totally like what you have your dry cleaning in and stuff. It's like, yeah, why not, bro? Like, how
yeah.
they're normal people.
But like that's the thing, like where we mentioned like how they put so much effort into their details where you as a viewer are like you believe every single thing. You don't have to think of anything. Like because it's all fantasy, they've decorated it with all the technology stuff, but at its core, they're still mostly human beings. So that's what everyone relates to, and that's why you're able to sort of throw yourself into a fantasy environment and still really enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's these little things
Yeah,
that make it just more lived in, more relatable. It's like we've
exactly.
been with Star Wars for so many years. Why not expand it in this way? You know,
Yeah,
it's like compared to Star Trek, where they had so many episodes and they went into every single little thing that they could. Like, build out the Star Wars lore. Go for
yeah,
it. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing
I agree.
egregious. But there's cereal over there. Like, yeah. What else are they gonna eat for breakfast?
And it's like it's characterization as well, because it's not just cereal for the sake of being cereal. It's actually showing you how the mother is still treating cereal like a child.
Yeah.
She's not like letting him cook something or like giving him like actual food. She's still giving him the cereal. Like it's not like cereal is pouring it by himself and just eating cereal. Like she's giving and pouring the milk, and like you understand a lot of their relationship based just on those aspects. And if it wasn't cereal, it would have meant something else. That's what I actually really like, along with all the other stuff you mentioned.
Yeah. I wonder if they're
Yeah.
gonna sell it and how, if it's gonna be good.
What? If
I
they
want
what?
it. I want that cereal, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, dude, that would be awesome. Actually, that would be amazing. All right.
It's a great ad.
All right.
Oh, last thing, they
So
also
yeah.
use it to
Okay.
show the passage of time because it gets all mushy later. Okay, I'm done about the cereal. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So what I'll do is I'm trying a new recap structure where I'll just literally mention like one or two lines about the scene, and then like how we just talked about it right now, we'll talk about it instead of me going into super detailed recap. And so Cyril is there, and I mentioned last time that he's Karn. He's no longer Cyril. Now he's back to being Cyril. He's no longer Karn, at least for this episode. That's what I love about him. His character is so going up and down, where you're just like, this is how real people are. This is how we all feel inadequate. Uh, and all right. So and his like the scene is with him and his mom is just berating him. I don't even know if it's passive aggressive because she's just telling him exactly how disappointed she is in him. And then she mentions that she's gonna have to call Uncle Jack Harlow for a family favor.
Many questions about that uncle.
Oh, they've built so much intrigue about him just by mentioning him.
Yeah.
And I know
Jack
he's going to be there. Yeah,
Could be
it could be
amazing.
Jack Harlow.
He's just trying to get him a rap career now.
Uncle
It's like, you know what?
Harlow.
You can be my roadie.
Yo, it's.
Oh, yeah, it'd be funny. He might just turn out to be nobody, but the way that they kept on being like, "Yeah, Uncle Hollow, oh yeah."
I think he's obviously someone in the higher ups, like in the imperial offices, and he yeah. So because they apparently, and we mentioned this so many times, where he feels like a kid whose dad got him his job, and now he doesn't know how to handle the company, and that's literally what happened. Where his uncle put him in this police thing, and he was way out of his element and way in over his head, and it just like yeah. So yeah, man. You want something to say before? Because I'm gonna
Is this
dive
the
deep
episode where
into.
she talks about the vision? Is that because they keep cutting back to it? So I don't remember what happened and what cut to, but there's one where she says she has a vision for him. She has seen what he needs to be doing.
No, that might be in the next episode, which I don't know. Have you seen the next episode?
No, not the next episode. There was one, like, it's a little small part, and he's kind of like, oh, what? Of course, can you see the future now? It was just such a weird thing where it's like,
about her predictions and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
her predictions. Sorry,
yeah.
They made it seem like a vision almost, which I found interesting.
No.
It could be just her being like a mother having like a vision for her son and stuff, but at the same time, it's Star Wars. You know, like there's fucking space wizards. Like
that's true, actually. It's possible. You might be right. You have been right about a lot of things in this so far. I'll be honest.
I'm gonna just keep throwing out theories, and
exactly, something's gonna stick. Something's gonna stick, right? We'll hang our hats on that. Please like and subscribe. All right. So all right. So she's just berating him, and okay. So we get so much more understanding about Cyril now that he's almost all the things we were talking about. How he's got an overbearing mother, and she's always criticizing him for not being good enough, and she's always disappointed in him, and he knows that, and it shows like he's Sorry, you want to say that?
I was just gonna say that it's funny that we could predict all of that in the first episode.
Exactly, just because of his acting and the way his character was shown.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, like we had those questions where we were like, he doesn't seem like this is what he's supposed to be, and that's exactly how they meant it for it to be, for us to actually question the character. and speculate on why, because we should know the character as he is from the beginning, because then it wouldn't be that interesting.
And I felt like they could have overdone it, but they kept it short enough and in small little brackets of like, okay, just little spurts of here we are back here for a second, which is enough. We already knew what was going on. It's like they were setting up something else. Meanwhile, they're just reconfirming what we are pretty much expected.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, in the beginning, he looks like closed off emotionally, and it's like there's two reasons why you could be closed off. One, you could be a badass soldier who's like seen too much war and all that stuff, you know. But he's just emotionally closed off because his mother criticized him all the time. And I think that's like, I think it's so great that they're like building a villain character in this manner where you like empathize for him and like you pity him, and you're like, oh, I wish you succeed, you know. I want you to do well and like get out of the shadow of your overbearing mother. Yeah, he's like feelings of inadequacy, he lacks any sense of authority, but he wants to be in a position of power. And yeah, you want to say something? Should I keep going?
I think it's interesting that we're learning so much about Cyril from actions and things we see on screen versus Andor. We're learning much more from just being told.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that so much in this show so far has just been like we're learning stuff just through dialogue, that and it feels like natural dialogue that's important to the plot and to the characters, but like there's like expository information sprinkled within it, you know, where it doesn't feel like the characters are trying to like tell the audience, now this is what's happening and this is our relationship. You just sort of learn through the way they talk to each other.
Yeah.
And also so Cyril's mom reminds me of Lucille Bluth. And Cyril's like the depressing version of Buster, if you really think about it. He's a very
got a little bit of a Jewish mom vibes.
Yeah. It's just hilarious to me. And I think it will be so amazing if they actually find out that his dad might have just been like a tailor and he loved his dad and he just wanted to follow his dad's footsteps, and his mom was like, oh no, that's not what a man is supposed to do, and you're supposed to be in power, and like he's just sort of pushed him into this.
You could see George Costanza play Cyril in that scene.
Exactly, and it would still work. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Serenity now.
Yeah, it's like the real life version, like the dark, dingy version of what George Costanza would be.
George Costanza in space.
Yeah.
The name of the episode.
George Costanza. Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, that's awesome. George Costanza in space. We'll write that down. And so, okay. So one important thing that she mentions, one line that I wanted to, she says, I know what you tell me and I intuit the rest. And that's exactly what Luthen said to Cass in the spaceship in the beginning of episode 4, where when he's talking about his stuff about the cooking or whether it's surviving and all that. And I immediately drew parallels to the differences of the leadership between Luthen and Cyril's mom, where Luthen is saying, where they're both approaching this matter with the same mentality, and they're saying the exact same things, but the way they deal with the other person is so different, where he instills confidence in Cass, you know, and like sort of even motivates him to like even like go on a suicide mission, where she can't even she berates him so much that he can't even be like a regular police officer without feeling like having an inferiority complex and just like feeling bad about himself all the time, and he ends up failing because of all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, my question would be more of like, how much authority does she actually have? Because in between, at first, it seemed like she was actually kind of controlling or trying to control him, but by the end, with his responses, it seems more like he has to live with his mom, but he's not really, he's more about like, yeah, well, what did he say? You know, I've heard your side of this conversation. I always do, but like, what, like, I don't know. I by the end, it just didn't seem like he was really like following her. It was more about what else is he going to do. That's what he got to do.
No, so that's kind of how these relationships end up, where when you have like a dominating parent and an authoritative parent who keeps doing this over time, like the use that child parent relationship never goes away, even though the child becomes an adult. And so they start either becoming super closed off and rebellious, which is what I think he might still have done, where she may not have wanted him to go and he may have rebelled against her and gone. That's why she slaps him, but she's like, okay, come back in the house. Because people like that, they enjoy the aspect of controlling and being authoritative. So even though like like a lot of this her power is gone from him, the fact that he's back to her, she sort of enjoys this and she starts that cycle all over again about making him feel worse about himself. And so when he goes out into the world, he's basically just projecting all that stuff onto the world, which is why we're seeing like his hatred isn't actually based on anything other than the fact that he feels bad about his mother and he doesn't know how to take it out on her. But this is like, because this is like the basis of a lot of serial killers at the end, like real life serial killers,
Okay,
where
Cyril.
where so exactly. So Cyril is like just this like he's becoming like an empty, hollow man, and he just needs to get out all his frustrations, and they just pick like a target, and that's sort of how we end up seeing him become, where he just feels like he's and what I love about it is that they haven't made him like one dimensionally emotionally closed off. They show him that he feels bad. He kind of cries in the beginning, and by the end of the night, he's just like hollow, and like he's just like all his emotions are just suppressed to the point where he has nothing left but just hate and anger and disgust. And he can't, a lot of serial killers, they show like even in all the shows where the first target is the dominating authoritative parent, where I think Red Dragon was about that. And yeah, that's the one famous one that comes to my mind. Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great breakdown. I never thought
Yeah.
of it that way, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. That's probably you're
Yeah.
right on the money there.
Yeah. I hope so. That's why I'm loving this so far, where he's seeming like so much more fleshed out and layered than any other villain that I've seen in like in recent times in movies also, and when it comes to sci-fi, fantasy, and all this kind of stuff, where you would normally just see a one dimensional, slightly layered villain, but not to this extent where you sort of see him as a loser. I mean, Joker kind of did that, but you sort of knew that it's Joker. But here it's like you see his downfall from where he was at his position, and now he's just going down, but in like not in like a dark way where you're like, ooh, he's getting scary. He's just becoming sad and like I don't want to look at him anymore. I'm like, oh, oh, it's like, dude, I feel bad for you, but like, ew. And he knows people feel that about him. He knows that. That's why he wants to take it on. And the mother is so delusional in her authoritative manners, where she's just sort of pushing him back into the same cycle of like, oh, I'm going to call Uncle Harlow. And she because she's so middle class, you can see that from their apartment. But the way she is and the way she's sort of grooming him, she wants to be thought of upper class. I think she has family in upper class. And you've seen this in a lot of family structures where like one part of the family is middle class and has upper class people in their family, and they are so wanting to be in that thing that they could never be it, so they sort of push their children into it, and the children can never like accomplish what their parents, and so they just feel bad, and the parents make them feel worse, and this is getting way too close to home, but that's all I know so much about this. But yeah, I love that. I promise I'm not going to talk so much about any of the other scenes until it comes back to Cyril.
Okay, I
Okay,
do
I
like
promise.
he could go so many places and they all would be interesting. I heard one theory
Yeah.
that the uncle, what is, for example, I feel like this is a long shot, but imagine he puts him into the rebellion, and eventually that's how he uses that to find Andor, and eventually he finds him, and that's when he flips back. And you thought, oh, maybe he's joining the rebellion, but actually, all he was doing was trying to find Andor. which could be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I'm just the fact that I've seen where they've gone with the characters so far. I'm like, take it wherever you want to, because you're doing such a great job with it. I know wherever you take it will be interesting. So yeah, I don't even care whether I like my speculations are correct or not. I'm just glad wherever they're taking it, I know it's going to be interesting, hopefully.
Yeah, let's get to the next breakfast scene, which is a theme that I feel like you missed because there was a lot of breakfast in this episode.
So that's not a theme. That like maybe, I mean, obviously it's a theme, but I was going to mention that at the end of the episode, that it's more of the story structure, where the whole episode is actually just one day, and we see three time moments of the whole day, where you see each character in their respective location in the morning, where
Well,
they wake up and their morning routine, except for one character.
do you really think everything that happened with Andor was just one day? They made the
Th-
entire
this this
track.
whole yeah, this is that's what I noticed by the end of the episode, where it's like every person starts with the morning routine, then they show what's happening during the day, and then the show ends with what's at the end of the night.
The only thing that makes me question that is because the things that they were teaching Andor when don't seem like things you would teach on the same day of you leaving for the mission.
But remember, they only had like 3 days when he was plugged in.
Was it 3 days?
Yeah, something like that. It was very close to whatever the days was, but it was like three days or something. I think she says like, she like screams at him like, "Oh, we're 3 days in. You're gonna find a mercenary." Blah 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 blah. For in episode 4, I think. I could look it up, but I'm pretty sure.
No, I will take.
But yeah, I'm 100% sure, because it would be very very weird for them to do this whole thing, the structure like that, because it's like I went through the episode again, where I noticed like each character starts with their morning routine, then you see what they are doing during the day, or most of them, and then you see all of those characters what they are at the end of the night.
Yeah,
because they follow through with what they talk about at the beginning of the episode.
But that is shocking. That
that
they
I was
weren't more upset about. I get that she was saying that like it was either him or it was over, but then what the hell, Luthen? Who thinks this is a good idea? Because
but we see that even he's concerned about it.
Yeah, but there's so many problems with it where like these guys have been there for 5 months and there are things that Andor is teaching them where it's like, what the fuck were you going to do? She's like, it was going to be messy. The whole time you're saying this is such a difficult mission. When you've been here 5 months, also, how have you not been caught in 5 months if you're that openly practicing this shit? You just get the guns, which also they call them guns and not blasters, which is again weird because we were discussing how they didn't look like blasters weirdly. So I wonder if that ever was going to come into play. Like, I think this is the first time they use the word guns in Star Wars, and I wonder if that is a blunder or if that's they're trying to set something up where they're about to shoot bullets at people. She's like, I mean, why not? But it opens up a lot of questions.
I'm pretty sure like it won't be given how detailed they've been with everything. 100% like they've done their research and they've just decided to make this this thing, and I guess we'll see how it plays out.
So you think bullets will come out of that, out of those guns?
It could.
By the way, I think your video is frozen.
Once again, yeah. So sorry, listeners.
No problem. It happens. But yeah, I'm very curious. I really hope that it is on purpose and they will do something with it. Would be a shame if it was for no reason. There you go. And you're back.
Professional podcaster.
Oh yeah, continue. Next breakfast.
Yes. So I call the scene breakfast at Mons. And wait, no, that's scene 3. First we have we have what's his name? Cassian, Clem. He wakes up and he finds out that Vel has asked Skeen to look through Clem's stuff, and Skeen sort of asks him like, "Oh, where'd you get this gun? And what's happening? Like, what's your backstory?" And they sort of get into a discussion about uh, uh, Clem recognizes Skeen's tattoos, and this we sort of get to know Skeen's backstory a little bit.
So there's a few things here. First of all, trivia-wise, the gun that he asked about, which we think is Cyril's, it actually has, you can see it has the logo and the serial number from the corpos, letting you know that it's specifically a corpo gun. And there's also another blaster that he's using where it's a bit of a deep cut, but basically it was from an extended lore, the stuff that they got rid of. And then in the video game Battlefront 2, they brought it back and made it an official blaster. And it was just like the first official, like real live action Star Wars thing that's featuring this. But there's another thing here that's similar, a bit more important than the gun. But yeah, a little trivia there. And
That's
then
interesting.
the tattoos on our man, again, I forgot his name. What was it? No,
Skeen.
Skeen.
Such an easy name to remember.
I don't know. It's such a weird name to me. Skeen. I don't know.
Skeen.
No reference. Where is my Bob with two B's? You know.
Oh yeah, exactly. I missed him.
But yeah, so those tattoos. First of all, he mentions a crate, which is the only thing that, like the way it's spelled, there's a crate dragon. But specifically, the things that he mentions are not known things in Star Wars. Those are the things that they're building up new. And apparently, it seems like they're prisons, I guess, that they're referencing to, because also it looks imperial and it's almost like a barcode, kind of like highlighting the fact that like the Empire used them almost like a product. And I think, again, this is them building up their Andor lore, which I thought was really cool, because the first thing I was like, oh, am I supposed to know this? And I looked it up and I was like, no, there's some references to the hand. They're like two different hands, but it would be pretty crazy if he was related to those. So it seems like this is just to, show that he was a prisoner. And like I said, this was the thing I was referencing, where maybe years from now, a prison shows up and then it's this crate thing or something, and it would be just like really cool to just be like, oh shit,
yeah,
I guess that's where oh, you forgot his name again. Skeen, dude. Skeen, Steve.
Just remember Skeen.
Let's call him Steve. Steve with
Steve,
two V's.
all right, there we go. Steve, yeah, there you go. Or with two T's. Saint Steve.
But yeah, just a little trivia for this.
That's cool.
But I like the little nod between the Andor and Steve, where he was like, so you immediately looked at these tattoos, so that nobody else understood these. That means you must have done time. And he mentions he did juvie for, I think, I guess he said 3 years when he was 13 or something like that.
Yeah, and he mentioned that he was in Nimba at 16.
I think that's, well, we know he was in the war, and you would assume that was probably also in his teens as a cook. I don't know. I don't remember.
I honestly don't believe anything he's saying anymore.
Well, I feel like the one real, like, we know two things for real. We know that he's from that planet and a foundling. And we know that he was a cook in the army that ran when it came to, like, when shit got real. Because that's what we learned from Luthen. So, yeah. I think those are the two real things we can trust so far. And everything else we got to take with a grain of salt.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, there is a mugshot of him, so he must have done time before.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, I also really like how we get to know like Skeen's backstory a little bit, and we start understanding what these characters are, and the bond between Skeen and Clem. It starts to become something, and we see that grow more and more, and has its up and downs throughout the episode. So I really like that. and how he just mentions like, oh, he's only here just for revenge. So we're like, oh, we're cool, like, it kind of makes sense. And they sort of discuss problems with how problems. Clem mentions, oh, it's always hard working in a team, and I think that's like such a huge themes throughout all this, especially like even in different things where in the Imperial office with like Mira and Blevin, like they have such a like animosity towards each other, and they have to work with each other. So yeah. Yep.
No,
And I
also I like
think
that it's
yeah,
starting to set up the whole Steve not trusting Andor and
right.
trying to figure out who he is. I think I don't even know for sure. We never got the to find out if he was really told to go through his stuff. He's like, you can take it up with her.
Yeah.
She's asleep, but if you want, you can just go. So
Yep.
it might have been just a good poker face that he had right there.
I agree. I agree.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
And
still,
yeah.
as much as I like the other line, also still a great line with the whole the X forgets
Oh yeah,
the
that's
tree,
that. This is where the title comes in. The axe forgets and all
take a shot whenever they say the title.
that. Right. And just to quickly mention, I just remember the two other famous characters that have happened. The serial dominating mother thing. Obviously, I can believe I forgot Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, with Norman Bates. That was a story with him and his mom.
That's what I was thinking of
And
when you were
yeah,
mentioning all
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, and also BoJack Horseman.
Is it?
That's exactly what happens to him. That's why he's like a lot of his stuff. He's like super depressed in his mid 40s, even though he's achieved success. So yeah, yeah. So there's famous references for you to understand Cyril's character a little better and why he's so fascinating to me. Right.
By the
All
end of
right.
this season, you're going to have to do an extra episode of just your breakdown of Cyril's
Oh yeah,
psyche.
yeah. 100%,
Serious
dude. I
psyche
think
with Shabs.
I might do a video essay on it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think
All
we
right.
might have some takes that people need to hear about that.
Oh yeah, totally. I'll bring out all the real life books of yeah, information and stuff. All right. So now we get to scene 3, which is breakfast at Mott's, and we see a little, obviously, like some conflict going on. We meet Mon Mothma's daughter, and right before that, she mentions to her husband Perrin, Cloris is the new driver's name, and it's a nice little setup that comes. I like these little setup and payoffs that they have throughout the episode as well. So that's paid off a little later, and it's not just like paid off in terms of a joke. You actually understand the characters better with that payoff. So that's why. And we meet her daughter, and they have a little disagreement about the schedule again. This is the first time the schedule is mentioned, and it doesn't go according to schedule. And yeah, you want to start with something, or should I go on?
I like the
That's
fact.
basically the whole scene.
I think there's. Well, let me start with the trivia. So first of all, the daughter again.
Okay.
That was the other part that was mentioned in the extended lore and stuff that was taken away. And I think she was mentioned in an animated show or something, but this is the first time we see her in live action. Not a
Mm.
trivia, but well, I guess trivia, but like, I don't think she's ever mentioned or is around when we see Mothra again. Mothra. We're just gonna Steve and Mothra. So when Mothra shows up later on in the rebellion, I don't think there's any husband or child. So I wonder what that means for the family. And is she only? There's the whole thing of the kid being like, "You're just using me for show. You're just trying to show face."
Yeah.
And she doesn't really fight her on it. So like maybe she's really just using them for show. And
Mm.
another little character moment I like, which goes into what you were saying, was the husband asking the name of the driver, meaning
Yeah.
last episode she was very suspicious of the driver.
Mm.
So that lets you already know that, like, okay, the husband is not part of the problem. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. Later on, he's
Right.
even like asking questions of, "Do you want me to let me know about this new operation or whatever, the new
Yeah.
foundation?" And she's like, "Yeah, no, it wouldn't interest you," and whatever she says. It's like just making it clear that, like, first of all, that he doesn't know what she's doing, but he's also not part of the people that she's afraid of, but he's probably
Right.
wouldn't agree politically with whatever she's doing.
He's
Yeah.
basically the upper class, disconnected husband who just wants to golf with the politicians to feel important. That's
Well,
basically, and he wants to invite them for dinner, and he doesn't really know anything, and he doesn't really care for
he
what's
might
happening with his
also
wife.
be something like Cyril, where he's feeling like powerless a little bit, and he later on wants to
Mm.
prove his masculinity in a way
Yeah,
where he
that could
makes
be
a
it.
big
Yeah,
move. You know,
yeah, yeah. That's
that could
true.
be.
That could come into play. We don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really love that they're showing like Mon Mothma. We see her become this like very significant character in the rebellion and stuff like that. But
Mm,
like in her early years, where she's just like having regular life mundane problems, where she wants to drive her daughter to school, and her daughter's like, "Oh, come on, you've never paid attention to me," and we're like, "Oh yeah, well." We as the audience know what she's doing, which is why she hasn't had time to pay attention to her. But it's just cool to see how like her daughter's innocent in all this, but her life's being affected by having a neglecting mother, where she just thinks that her mother is all into just like doing these big charitable things just for show, and she never pays attention to her daughter.
Well, you're saying wants to drive her to school, but what is if that was just a cover? What is if that she was actually using her because she was trying to meet another contact, and that's why the
So
schedule,
yeah,
and that's why now because her daughter doesn't want to comply, she can't meet the contact, and it fucks up her plan.
yeah. If that's the case, then we feel worse for the daughter, and we feel worse about Mon Mothma that than her being this great leader in the rebellion. I would hopefully, if that happens, hopefully she has an arc where she realizes and becomes a better person. But I hope that doesn't happen, because so far,
Like I said,
like it's
no
yeah,
husband, no
yeah,
later on.
right,
So
right. Maybe
either
they just got divorced. you know.
maybe they got killed, but maybe she was
Oh
just
yeah.
like, you know what, I don't need you anymore.
Oh right. Oh no. Or yeah, I'll take the more human side, where if that happens, maybe that happens because of her, and that like guilt about like even though they had like a dysfunctional relationship, they were still her family, and they weren't really involved in the empire as such. They were just like upper class people who just didn't care that much. But now like their blood is on her hands, so to speak. So she's even more motivated to like to take like for right now they're just doing it for a greater purpose, but now it becomes personal with her,
Yeah.
where we've seen this sort of thing also, where everyone is in a plot for the greater purpose, but every single person has something personal attached to the cause or to the plot, except for Cassian Andor.
But it's almost as if everybody has their own rebellion.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah, and so it also another it reminded me this whole dynamic. I don't know if you know the show The Killing, but
I haven't watched it, I've heard of it.
yeah, that's a really good show where it's about like the detective mother, and she's a single mother with a teenage son, and she's going after like these crazy murder thing, and she's like going crazy like trying to solve it, but like in the
Isn't that called
process her
Murder She Wrote?
I don't know. I haven't watched that, but
You don't know
The
Murder She
Killing
Wrote?
Mother. No,
With
I mean I've heard of it, but
that old lady on the typewriter in the opening.
no,
I
no.
don't think I
I
ever
mean I know,
watched the full
but
episode, but I always
yeah,
saw that
no,
opening.
no,
I think
no,
that's
no,
what it
no.
was called.
But the whole
Or it should have
thing
been called.
about that is like where she's involved in like doing something really good, that she's trying to solve this murder case, but she's also neglecting her son in the process, and that whole relationship is soured because of that. And we as an audience know what she's doing, but from the son's perspective, his life is completely being ruined just because her mother's always involved in her work. So that was like almost a very straight up reference, and I mean not a reference, but like a comparison to what's happening with Mon Mothma and daughter, unless you're right about everything that you're saying. Where she's just using them for everything. But yeah, and yeah, so next we get to understand Nemik, where Nemik sits down and explains like this old navigation system to Cass, and then he starts just waxing on about his whole belief, and he just comes, and he's just like literally one of those like anarchist woke angsty teens who are like, I'm gonna do this, man, and it's like I'm in it for the greater cause, and yeah, that's the next scene.
A lot of Matrix references again with this
Yes.
milk that he's giving, and he's like, it gives you all the substance you need, but it's terrible. Kind of like the
Yeah.
slob that he has to eat, Neo has to eat under Nebuchadnezzar. And
Yeah.
it overall, the way that Endor is being put into the group with, I still think there's a lot of, they're pulling a lot from that kind of Neo arc.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that he's that character again, that they're setting him up. That's my prediction. They're setting him up to die. He already has his memoir ready. He's,
Nemec, yeah, 100%.
he's written. He's so like already like likable out of all the guys, the most approachable. He was the first guy to trust Andor. He's the first guy to go. He's gonna get the most terrible death out of all of them, and it's gonna be Endor's fault. That's my prediction.
Yeah. And Andor mentions this to Skeen in the first scene that they're. This is hard to. It's almost like a rhyme. Skeen in the first scene, where he says, "Oh, it always starts young," and Skeen is like, "Oh, you worried about Nemec? Don't worry. He's got like he believes in the cause more than anyone." And so it's almost like foreshadowing what's going to happen.
Like I said, he's written his memoir. His words are already on paper. He can easily like inspire the next generation or whatever, or at least
it's like be the Book of the Jedi.
Or at least his mama knows what he was thinking.
His mind Kampf.
But I really like the device also that he gives him, where he's like, "This is, it's really difficult to use, but when you use it, you're off the grid. No one can hack it. If it breaks, you repair it, and it's freedom." And it's such a cool way of just like the way he puts it. Also, another little Easter egg, that was just the back of an old Polaroid camera.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Again, them bringing the old school tech and stuff, lo-fi, really nice.
You know what it reminded me of? The old Nokia phone. You know, all the memes with the old Nokia phones that it never breaks.
Wait, what?
You don't know that? Like, there's like 100,000
was
memes.
that big?
No, like in terms, not like in terms of look, but like in terms of the whole idea of like this old version of a device that's like super high tech now.
Yeah.
Like all the memes of like oh, you drop this phone and it cracks, and drop a Nokia, like there's like Thor's hammer on it and it doesn't, like the hammer breaks instead of the phone. So that's exactly what I was like, oh, like maybe they're referencing that. I love that they're making us speculate with all this stuff, because we know that they might be referencing it, right? Like that's how much effort they've put into their detail and how well they've designed everything, that you're just like, oh yeah, they might, right? They've put in so many Easter eggs, so
I mean, the tattoos
they could be making a reference.
Straight up just being like, look, this is something in any Star Wars show. You will go Google what he just said, and there'll be like 50 Wikipedia articles about it, going into deep depths of all of it. But no, we just made this shit up. This is literally we just sat here and we're like, yeah, well, let's go with this. And maybe one day we'll do something, or someone will do something with it. Maybe it will never be mentioned again. Either way, it was important enough for our scene. It strengthened the character, and it doesn't need to be more than that. So at the same time, you're sitting there and you're on your toes, and now you never know. Is it going to be something new? Is it something old? Either way, it works.
I agree. And and then so where were we? Yeah, okay. Now we get to Vel and Teramin trying to ask Clem how to calibrate the like they're going over the Rono, I think, or something, that it's like it's on a launch pad, and basically they're trying to ask Clem. So how you mentioned earlier, you were like, wait, they've been in this 5 months. How did they not know this information and that information? So this scene is, I guess, basically an answer to that, where they don't know how to calibrate the weight of the thing. And that's why, like, and this is the first straight up scene where I'm like, Clem is lying about everything he is saying in this scene.
Yeah,
He is asking those questions. He's asking random questions just to stall so that he can come up with a made up answer and to actually make sure that they don't know anything about it so he can say anything with confidence and it'll sound
he's like, you
okay.
don't
Just
know.
like what he, yeah,
You
yeah,
wouldn't be asking me if you knew. And the guy's like,
exactly.
well, why would that not be in the menu? And
Yeah, yeah.
he has this moment.
It's an add on.
It's such a tiny moment where like
Yeah,
actually Diego Luna played that well. That whole scene,
yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah.
worked great. Where like I think later scenes his acting was a bit more stiff, but here
Mm,
it played well. Where you were
yeah,
questioning, and he almost had me believing at one point until the guy's like, why is it not in the manual? And he's like, oh, it's a custom job. It
it's a
wouldn't it
custom
wouldn't
job.
wouldn't wouldn't be there. There's just this little thing underneath that you use to
Yeah,
read the measurements, which
right.
now is the question. His whole job is to drive that thing. He made it very clear. If this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to fucking do this. You're not going to interfere with me. This is my shit. So he's going to fuck this shit up so bad.
So, so my point was this, right? Okay. What if Cassian knows a lot more about all of this stuff than he's letting on? What if he knows that he needs to do some things and he's doing all this and he's he's very charming and manipulative in getting what he wants from everyone we've seen on Marloni. So what if his whole idea was to pilot that thing
Hmm? I mean,
and
at
he
this point,
and
he
he
has
convinced
to.
them,
Like,
right?
what is his way out? At the same time, he seems very concerned about his life, also. So, for him, that's what is so great about it. That's where now, if you go back to talking about him as a character, this wouldn't work if he was any different. Where we still
Yeah,
don't trust the guy, so that we literally do not know what's going to happen next episode.
yeah,
Where maybe he was completely lying and he's
that's
gonna
true
go there
actually.
and he's gonna completely act a fool and
Mm,
just try and pretend and gonna completely ruin everything. Or
mm,
it was legit. Maybe it was a custom
right,
job and this is
right.
actually what he knows. But the thing is, it works both ways right now until we see next
Mm,
episode. It's that's again, I don't think that would work if we had more trust in him or if you knew more about
yeah.
how little we can trust him.
Mm.
At this point, we're still trying to figure it out.
I guess that's his like character for the audiences. Where what's interesting about his character is the whole speculation. Where even to us now, the fact that like we as an audience, like Karn's thing was, you started questioning his whole thing from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And in that same manner, I think the writers have written his character in in this way where the audience is supposed to keep, where we still shouldn't know whether this guy is here or there, whether he's going to just trick all of them, just get the money and just get out. Maybe he's going to steal some stuff for himself from the armory or some stuff and just fuck off from right there. Where I guess that's what's interesting about his character, that even we as an audience, just like everyone around him, is always unsure of his motives and what he's going to do next, and how much does he know and how much is he letting on.
Exactly. And I
Right,
will keep mentioning it because I still think somewhere in there it's still a spy show. And this is how they keep us on that
right,
level where we,
right,
if we can't trust the protagonist, how can we trust anybody? You know,
right,
there's
right.
always, we always think there's going to be one extra layer to every character. That's like one conversation with one person, and suddenly you're like, oh, that changes everything.
Mm,
And
I
so
agree.
I feel like that's a really cool vibe actually. Where again,
That's true actually.
I don't think it's his characterization so much as his portrayal again. Where, like we said,
Yeah.
maybe it was yeah, I don't know. Again, maybe it's not even the portrayal. It's a weird character to portray. It's very unusual to have this kind
For
of
a
protagonist.
protagonist.
Yeah, it's not something we see very often. So it's not something you could compare very easily to other
Yeah.
characters. Like maybe, let's say Leo DiCaprio in The Departed, maybe where he's the good guy, but he's acting shady. But it's more like you know more about him. But like the way he's acting in it is not the typical protagonist because everybody is it. I don't know.
Or I think they're just trying to do the whole idea of like, here's the story we want to tell you, but it's through the perspective of this shady guy who sort of comes in the middle of the good versus evil of Luthen and his
But
rebellion versus the Imperials.
my
And
argument would
here's
be that it's
Cass.
not his perspective, though. If it was his perspective, I feel like we wouldn't question him as much.
No, so oh right.
We're
That's
like
true.
it's his perspective of like this group right now.
No,
But
but like I think that's the whole point of like they want to make us like show us this story that's happening between Luthen versus the Imperials, and they're keeping the vehicle of Andor interesting from the point of view where it's like we're interested in his character as well, where he's not just being used as like as a way for us to just be introduced into all this. Maybe that's what it is.
I feel like for me,
Yeah.
it keeps the intrigue going. It keeps me
Yeah.
wondering
Yeah.
where I almost hope that I'm wrong. And I hope that
Right.
he actually knows what the hell he's doing.
Right.
And it's not him that's going to mess up. Like,
Mm.
if he just goes in there and is a badass, that opens up way more questions. Actually, maybe about as many questions where you're just like, okay, so how the hell do you know all this stuff if you were a cook and a prisoner?
I'm 100% sure he's gonna fuck something up and get someone killed because of him. 100%. Because if you think of it from a character arc point of view, what else can they do that would be like? I mean, if he just goes in and is just like everything, what he's been saying throughout is just what it is, that would be like the least interesting character for the middle part of your show, where that's your protagonist and he's just been like this regular dude who just everything he's saying is actually just what it is on face value.
Well, it hasn't been that.
Yeah.
Yes, I
That's
guess
why
it
I
would
think
be as
I
interesting.
think the most predictable thing would be that he is in over his head and he's just making up stuff
But that's why,
and he's
because
sort
it's
of out of his element.
predictable, it would be interesting if they flip it. It's like, oh
Yeah.
shit, so we thought we couldn't trust him, but now sometimes we can't trust him. It
Right.
keeps us on our toes. But
Yeah.
at the same time, because what that would mean is that, so here's the interesting thing. If he's lying, then he's the problem and he's going to mess it up. If he's not lying, it turns out that these guys spent 5 months and they were ill prepared.
Right.
And then they're the problem.
Well, they are ill prepared. That's clear.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, do we trust anything? We only know because Andor is pointing it out. Now, if you can't trust Andor.
No, well, even Luthen was kind of like, it's either him or call it off. Like it was at that point. So
I guess.
And it's good that there's like kind of unprepared, because I mean there's just 5 rebellions. Like she mentioned, like she's like, we've been eating roots and like smoking grass, and for months, she says. So it would be more believable that there are some things that they weren't able to find out. Like, I mean, they're just 5 people trying to infiltrate an Imperial thing through the help of one Imperial guy gone rogue who can meet them like for like 10 minutes every few hours or something like that. So it is more believable. Like if they knew every single thing, again, like the show wouldn't be. It would be very simple. It would be interesting, but just very simple, and not how it's been so far, where the characters are a little more flawed and it's more relatable in terms of like. It's everything is not just like perfect.
Just 5 months is a very long time to not
That is true.
do any of this shit. Where like he learned this stuff in 2 days. On the 3rd day they were marching. You know, most of the stuff he learned on the morning of them starting the march to the mission. And what did you do for 5 months then? You know,
or maybe they're testing. Maybe they spoke within themselves that they're testing Clem.
Or it was 4 months of that guy building his model, and he's like, "Just give me
Dude,
that's
what it was. Also, speaking of that, like, wasn't Mouse like part of like the programming and stuff? Because he says that he designed the lady in the red dress. So that's
Yeah,
also the same thing, like where they're designing models for the thing,
yeah, that's what I was
right?
saying last time, that he
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
programmer.
Oh, right, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
I totally forgot what we said in our previous episode.
It's
It
okay.
was so long. It was so long ago. All right.
Yeah.
So next is like Termin is sort of explaining to Clem the whole layout and stuff, and then we get to the next scene where we see Lieutenant Gorn for the first time, and he's reprimanding. I think this is the first time we've seen him in his element, where he's being a lieutenant in the Imperial people, right? So far, we've just seen him with the rebels, but now we're seeing what he is as an Imperial commander.
I appreciated that they kind of didn't give a hint. They were just like, "You better remember." I was the first two. I was like, "Isn't he the guy from the crew?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, he was a spy." It's like, "Oh shit, okay."
Oh, you forgot.
You know, like they gave no reference to it and stuff. I thought that was very,
Right.
again, very adult. No, they don't need to beat you over the head with it. They think, I like that they
Yeah.
expect their audience to be smart enough. You know.
Obviously, yeah. I was actually, because during the before watching, in the middle of watching 4 and 5, like in 4 we discussed that Skeen might be like Cypher, that he'll end up betraying everybody because he seems shady. Where I started thinking that maybe Skeen is more like a red herring, where the show is gonna make you believe that he's the shady one and he's gonna betray. But I was starting to point my fingers at Lieutenant Gorn until I learned more about him in this episode. But in the middle, I was like, what if he's the Imperial spy? And then Cassian mentions that as well later. So I was like,
That's
maybe
why
he's the
now
one
it's
who ends up
almost too on the
like,
nose. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
from everything they showed with him, how he reacted to the
I agree.
temple
Yeah,
and everything,
I
it's
agree.
probably true.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. So all right, so he's there's like I think 3 scenes with Lieutenant Gorn, and every scene I had to start the scene with writing Lieutenant Gorn is reprimanding his employees. That's literally what he does in each of his scene, where he's reprimanding his employees for not cleaning up or something like that, and then we sort of get to know more so that he's creating diversions and making it believable for his employees to be stationed and positioned where he wants them to be positioned, and not so much about the actual cleaning and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. And what one small little detail I found really cool was that the employees are like the whatever his officers are just like, oh, those guys need, like the commander's wife needed some help moving furniture, and I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty much what they would be doing. They're just people, right? At the end of the
Should
day,
call
like,
She-Hulk.
yeah, this is like my goodness. And
But
yeah,
yeah, like I said,
and
the thing I like was when he goes to the temple and he's like, target practice, kind of
oh
setting
yeah,
up the whole
yeah,
thing that yes, he has a
yeah,
relation to the locals and stuff, and he would care
right,
about something like that.
right, yeah. And then we sort of have a small little scene of Karamin trying to explain the plan to Clem, and they have a small little conflict of like he's trying to like, oh, you move like this and you do this, and Clem's like, don't effing touch me, bro. Like,
Don't
don't ever. You
don't
want to say
touch me.
something to me? You say
Tell me.
you don't touch me, bro. Tell me, you know.
That
Don't
was an
and
interesting point where again
yeah,
it's like the it was when it comes to Steve touching Andor's stuff the second time, and he's like, "Why are you touching my stuff?" I felt
yeah,
it. Feel like that was there because of the stone, because he was trying to hide it. But
right. That's what it is.
I,
Oh,
I
buddy, also. Oh, right,
but
right.
because the first thing with the "Don't touch me, tell me" happened, it was like I first
Mm.
started to think like, does he have like a personal space issue or something? Is there like something social
Mm.
going on? But that's why but I don't think they're actually related. I think that
Mm.
there's something else. But it seemed important enough that they made a point of him being like, "Yo, I don't
Right,
like to be touched." Like there must have been something in his past where like this is I don't do this. You know,
right.
this
I
is
agree.
reminding me of a time I don't want to be reminded of.
And COVID.
6 feet,
Sorry,
bro.
please bleep that out. I don't want to be demonetized.
That COVID gets you demonetized.
Yeah,
Like it hasn't done
I don't
enough.
think, yeah, I don't think we can talk about that. But yeah, yeah, and then we get to like he's like, can you walk like a soldier? And then we cut to soldiers, Imperial soldiers in our back home, Morlana. We're back there, and we see how almost at the N word, NAZY, Imperial occupied state looks like how they start just getting into a place and just kicking everyone out, and it's just like it's like so sad to actually see it happen. And we see our Imperial commander Blevin. He's sort of overlooking the whole thing.
That name.
You have a problem with it too? Me too. I wasn't gonna mention it because I was like, I don't want to mention any dumb things anymore because we're short on time. But if what's your problem with it? Tell me.
No, we gone about it the first time Blevin came up, but it's just Blevin. I can't get over that.
Blevin, yeah. It's like I thought of like pitch meeting where it's like, hey, we have this character. Should we name him Kevin? No, it's not Star Wars enough. Blevin, okay. Devin, no, Devin's too normal. Like you gotta go Star Wars, so it's Blevin, and it's the same would be like
instead of Kevin, I was like they probably mentioned Devin.
Oh, right, Kevin? Devin? No, Blevin.
Blevin.
It's Blevin. Hey, we have this alien, and she has a female reproductive organ. Should we just call it a vagina? We'll call it Bragina.
Regina.
Bragina. That's a Drawn Together reference. I don't know if you guys know Drawn Together.
But yeah, that scene is where you see the
right.
What I was talking about, the dry cleaning bags for the clothes and stuff.
Oh no, so it's not dry cleaning. You know what that is? That's the trolley. That's the trolley for the hotels where they are for the luggage trolley, because we see them emptying out a hotel and they're like, oh, we're just kicking out all the guests. So even the high class citizens of Morlana are just being kicked out straight up.
Yeah, because I was just focusing on the fact that they had those suit bags.
Oh, right.
Like, every time they just when they're bringing stuff from our world over there, it's like, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I'm like, I have that meme with from
I get that
with Leo from Once Upon a Time. I'm like, yo, I get that. I've seen that before.
I get it. I've
had one of those once.
And you know what's funny? Like, this is the first we've seen of Morlana, I think, since episode 3. And like after like all this stuff has gone by, like in episode 4 and 5, I think
I was gonna say that's one
completely
episode we didn't do. Yeah.
No, like since like but it's I was thinking of Morlana and how like everything that we know of the world is like so much bigger. That Morlana, just like, because in the beginning Morlana was like the whole place for us. That was the world that we were introduced to, and every character in there, we spent it felt like 3 like months in it, and now it just feels like this tiny little quaint town, and it started reminding me of have you seen the movie Kung Fu Hustle?
Yeah.
So you know Pigsty, right? That whole community where it's like they're all like a community of scoundrels that hate each other and rip on each other, but then when there's like an outside threat, they like band together and they try to fight against it and like rebel against it. And that's exactly what like I was like, yo, Morlana is like Pigsty, and it just feels like so small and distant and like insignificant to like this is like second episode after Morlana, and it already feels like so in the back of my mind.
I mean, it was
in a good way. In a good way.
Episode and just go straight into the Scotland hills and just have this vast, like the new planet is so big and vast, and the vistas go on forever. Whereas Morlana was all like closed up and like just really
dirty dense. And like but and we see this new officer being introduced, and you see his motive, and he's just like, hey, can you make me prefect? Like, I know it doesn't come with extra pay, but I just like the title. And you sort of understand like these guys and like these, like, you know, you get it. They're just in it for power and like entitlement and status.
And I like the writing. Where he's like, so do you want you take it? He's like, do I have a choice not to take the job? He's like, no, you're taking the job. You want this building as your headquarters.
And he's like, what, the assignment? He's like, no, you're taking the assignment. I want to know if you want to take this hotel as your headquarters. And I agree.
And
that was very
I
funny to
really
me
want
too.
to know, what are those pens? Everybody has these pens in there. Like, are they pens? Are
Oh,
they like flashlights? Like in that scene, the guy has like two here, and then later the blonde lady has one on each side, and he's like, it looks like, well, in our world people would have pens in their shirt, but they have this other stuff.
yeah.
Like, it's too thick to be a pen, but maybe it's like a they have those magic pens where it has all the
Oh,
colors.
right. I think it might be rankings maybe or medals.
But I feel like for that they have another. I don't know. It would be
They
too
have
big
two.
for. It would be
They
too
have
big
two.
for rankings, but it
Yeah.
definitely. And
Like
it was like between.
there's one here and then one here.
Yeah, but you see the cylindrical things they have in
Yeah.
the pocket, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see
Yeah.
it later on the white suit, and then she'll have one
Oh,
on each
right.
side.
It's in the pocket. I think those are pens, maybe.
Some really big pens. Maybe they're magic markers. Maybe they just go around and scroll. They need to be ready to tag their name wherever they go. They just
Yeah,
they
something like
write red. We're the Empire. They're just like, Empire was here.
that. The Empire wasn't here. It's like
There's a
scratched. It's
secret
crashed into the back of the bathroom.
there's a secret graffiti war going on between the
Yeah,
Jedi and the
exactly.
Empire. And just like keep tagging
Uh,
over each other's pieces and shit. And like, yo, gotta be ready. I gotta have my fucking thick marker so I can get my name on there. Oh, like I
oh my
said,
god.
there used to be those these pens where you push up and then you got your red, your blue, your green.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were also
I
that
still have
thick.
those. I love that.
They were
Yeah.
also that thick, So maybe it's just those.
Mm, maybe.
They write a lot, They're pencil pushers, so maybe they need two of those at all times. I'm
Oh
really
my
just
god.
curious. I want to know. Somebody needs to find out what the hell those things are.
What the hell, dude?
Can't focus on any scene. The
Oh
whole
my
time just sitting there.
god.
What are you doing with those things? Why do you have two?
Isn't it heavy?
Yeah, it's
why don't you just carry like a pen case or a pencil box or something?
right. Like, I don't know. I need to know.
All
And
right.
I want one. I
All
want to
right.
walk around with one.
Please don't walk around, and you want to
I
be a
want the
prefect as well.
I want the cornflakes, and I want that.
So that's one thing that I wanted to bring up later on. But I'm glad you mentioned that. Oh, you want one? Like, I know you're saying it as a joke, but a lot of people will think that, and that's what makes me really like how the like super side characters are shown in this, where it's like they're just like, if they're, a lot of them are just like products of the environment that they were brought up in. Like, if you take like snooty privileged kids, they're just brought up in super rich, like Beverly Hills, like trashy homes, trashy from like trashy like reality TV moms, that type of stuff where it's like, it's because they're brought up, and maybe they're just regular kids, and they just go through this and they're like, oh yeah, I want that kid has a car like that, so I want that. And a lot of these people just seem like that. Like, obviously some of them have like super inherent racism about them, like towards other people and lower class people, but a lot of them just seem like just people who are just regular people brought up in this environment, and now they're just doing whatever, that's their job, and they want a little bit of power and some kind of like a better title. And we're like that too. Like, if I would work in an office, if you give me a good title, I'll be like, it would make me feel a little better, regardless of how stupid it is. But it does, like, it has a lot of relatable quality to it.
Yeah.
And you can't really like hate all of them from the point of view where it's like they're just disgusting, who hate everything and everyone around them. Oh, some of them are just like, yo, I just want to have like a huge office and like just be an important dude,
They might be
it's
other people from places like where Cyril's from
yeah,
poverty,
and
basically.
yeah, middle class. Cyril's straight up middle class.
I feel like he's almost basically poverty.
No. He's like straight up middle class in Coruscant. That's the problem. He's in a very rich society, so even, or maybe he's like in poverty in Coruscant, and that's what it looks like. Yeah, but yeah. So next we get to our rebels training and practicing how to march as soldiers, and we get to see, what's his name, Clem, demonstrate some knowledge about soldiers and how there's a little bit of conflict here and there, and yeah, that's the scene. You want to get into that?
Still not a fan of the name Clem either. I didn't have this thing with the names in the show. Some are great, some are like, it's like, okay. I I thought the scene where he starts where the leader comes and she's like, what's his main hand? What's her main hand? And so on. I liked what they were trying to show with it in terms
Mm.
of, okay, he's perceptive. There's more to him than we think. He actually knows some shit. But at the same time, it felt a bit strange the way it was paced with her just coming like, stop. Like, I she got out of him. I don't know why it felt weird why it was so important to her to test right now. Do you know everybody's hand? Like,
So I have a different perspective on that.
okay.
So basically, for me, this was a perfect example of different ways of leadership. The one of the biggest themes of this episode, where it's basically it starts with them walking like soldiers, and one of the first things that Terramin is sort of guiding this whole thing, and you see Cinta and Vel like just like chilling in the back, watching them. And one of the first things that Terramin says, he's describing Lieutenant Gorn is the leader. He is the gatekeeper. Okay, so that's like straight up like letting us know, okay, we're getting into a leadership moment. And when Clem mentions like about the switching of the hands, the first thing that Terramin does is he gets defensive. It's almost like his leadership was being questioned by this new person. And what he does is he says, why don't you just shut up, watch me, and then maybe you can get some suggestions, right? Now, the difference in his leadership and Vel's leadership, which we'll see throughout the episode, is so great, is that she wants to know the perspective of every person. She wants to take in every information from all her team members so that she, as a leader, can make the best decision. She doesn't have the arrogance of thinking that I have all the information and because I'm the leader, everyone should listen to me and not question me. And if they question me, they're questioning my leadership, not the issue at hand. She wants to show that I am open to every type of suggestion and every type of input from everyone. And that actually shows that it actually helps the situation rather than it could have derailed them. Because had they walked in, like, if it turns out that what he's saying is true, if they would have walked in like that, it would have straight up given them up as
Yeah.
people who are out of their thing. But because she says, you know what, even though he's new, I want to hear what he has to say. And they get to know, okay, maybe he's saying something that's true, and they switch. And even Taram is like, fine, okay, whatever, you know.
So I get that point. I think I lost the connection between him mentioning this is how these soldiers march. Like, it didn't connect to it. It could be like, okay, you're observant, so probably while you were in the army or you've seen these soldiers, you were able to clock this and you probably observed this because you are observant. But at the same time, I don't know if that specifically lets her know that you know this for sure. When the guy asks him, "Have you ever been in the army?" He's like, I've seen my things or whatever." He's like,
well, obviously, if his thing about like if he got all the answers right about who's right-handed, who's left-handed, they probably were like, wow, he figured that out in like one day without talking to anyone.
yeah, again, like I said, it goes to let her know that he's observant, but doesn't let her know for sure that he's seen soldiers march like this.
So okay, so what I said all about Vel's leadership, right? She's a good leader, and this is how a good leader should be. Like they take in the input of all the leaders. Maybe if what you're saying is right, so I have that as the next thing. Like, what if he's lying about all this as well, right? Like he maybe he wanted to pilot that thing, so he lied about the weight calibration. Maybe he lied to Luthen because he wants the Sky Kyber crystal. So if he's lying about all this, it could show that sometimes being a good leader might be a weakness, and you might just need an authoritative leader who knows that what he's saying is right and doesn't listen to every input from every. Maybe that could be the darker reality of where it's like, yes, thematically and like, you know, in terms of like like morally, this is the way a good leader should be, but in reality, maybe this is why these leaders don't prosper and fail, is because they don't have that conviction of their own that no, I'm the leader and I'm going to decide what's right and what's wrong, and I'm not going to get convinced so easily. Maybe this is one of her weaknesses, that she does get convinced so easily. She got convinced super easily by Luthen.
Yeah. I also like the fact that we never find out what she and the other lady is going. Cinta, what their plan is. Like the whole time they're like, you don't worry about it. And
we get to know next. Yeah.
That it's like, again, they're making sure that we as the audience always questioning everybody's motives.
Yeah. And that we don't get to know, we're not given every single piece of information in just one scene or in one episode where it's like, oh, now I guess I don't care what, I mean, obviously I care what happens next, but there's no actual mystery and building of tension without where you're like, wait, what are those guys up to? What the hell? Like, it's almost like a slight pull off the rug, not a complete pull off the rug, but it's like, yeah, hey, what are you like? Exactly like how Clem's questioning them. We're also questioning them. We're like, wait, what are you guys going to be doing? You're just sort of chilling in the back and just watching. And the fact that it's 2 women and 4 men that are in the 2 teams, there's obviously a thing that should be like, that would be woman centric, that the 2 other women are doing, right?
I took it more as they can't be soldiers, so they're probably.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that as well.
Like just because I guess female are different ranks or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe not different ranks. I don't know. Like, yeah, I thought that was again interesting, leaving us questioning that. And then can we already talk about what happens like in that same scene right afterwards?
Yeah, a TIE fighter whooshes by,
and he like buzzes the tower, kind of Top Gun style, just buzzes a dick to these guys and flies really low over them.
Yeah,
where I was just thinking again, like, you guys are practicing so in the open, and there's a TIE fighter that's flying super fast, and they're like, "Oh, go run, cover the guns, cover," and they're so slow with it.
Cover the guns.
They're like, like they're not even halfway done, and they're like, "I think we're good," and so they're like, "Oh no, we're not good. Keep going, keep going." It's like, you guys seem so unprepared for this. You've had 5 months. You couldn't come up with a better system in case like a TIE fighter flies by, which happens apparently quite a lot. Where again, yeah, I feel like, how have they not been caught already? Like, how has nobody come out and be like, "What do you get? What the hell? Why are there so many guys milking 3 goats out here?"
There's like 5 of them.
What, 5 goats?
No, like just 5 people.
Yeah, but why do you need 5 people for 3 goats? Yeah, in India you have one guy with like 500 goats.
That's because we're very disorganized. We need to work on that.
No, I'm just saying, this one guy can handle all these goats. Why do they need 5 for 3? You know, if I was that TIE fighter flying by, I would just be like, "There's 2 little goats. There's 2 little men. There are too many men, 2 little goats. Something ain't right.
Too many men, 2 little goats.
I gotta turn around and just see what the hell's going on over here. It's like, show me your milk.
Show me your milk. Come on. Too many men, too few goats. All right. So now we get to the next scene with Lieutenant Gorn, and guess what he's doing? That's right, you guessed it. He's reprimanding another employee. And I love that. So the employee is just like chilling by the fence, and he goes, enjoying the view. And normally you would expect the employee to just be like, "Oh no, sir, I was just doing something." He goes, "Oh yeah, sir. It kind of gets boring and stale, so there's not much to do." And you're like, wow, that's so true. That's actually, and Lieutenant Gorn's also like, "Okay, get back." And he's not like still chilling. He gets back in his attentive, the thing, like, position, but he's just like, he's like, yeah, they're talking to each other like actual human beings in an office setting. It's not like so cardboard and stiff where it's like soldier and commander, and they're just regular people, and they're just in these different environments where some are bad, some are good, and some have an actual hate, as we get to know with Lieutenant Kimchi, Colonel Kimchi, sorry. That's his name. It's not Kimchi, but it's Kim Z. I don't know why they chose that. They have very funny.
Why did you choose any of these names?
I have no idea. And but one small little thing I noticed was that when he's talking about his disgust for he calls them Donnies, and you can already see like that's sort of like a slur, like I don't want to mention any slurs here, but like they're like Aldanis, like that's what the native people were called. And he calls them, oh yeah, there's a couple of Danis out here and close enough to smell them, right? And you sort of see, like, again, it's like super ignorant and inherent hatred towards just lower class people without any sort of basis behind it other than just the fact that this was just the environment that, and this is what they've been taught throughout their lives, where it's like, oh, you're upper class and they're lower class, and ew, they're so gross and savages. Like,
Yeah, I
a lot
like
of
them
them, yeah.
setting up what the Empire was going to do with the land, where they're talking about how beautiful it is, and the Empire is going to come and destroy all of it and make
Yeah,
like a landing base or something like that over there. Which is
I agree.
again, and you can kind of tell how the guy is kind of like, yeah, this is kind of fucked up. But you can
Yeah,
tell he, again, highlighting the fact that he has some connection to this planet.
yeah,
So probably we can
yeah.
probably trust him. He might still get caught or something, but
Right,
at least it seems like he's legit.
right. And his facial expressions too when Colonel Kimsey says, like, oh, close enough to smell them, right? You can see like him feeling that sort of like racial slur moment where it's like, oh my god, this, like, it's sort of like reaffirming his belief in, like, this is why I'm fighting this fight, where even at a level like this you have people like that who are just so disconnected from all this other actual human stuff, where like because he's the only one going rogue, so for him it's like he has to keep questioning and validating his beliefs in am I really doing the right thing or am I not. So, yeah, and now we get to and also he sort of, just like the previous scene where he reprimands him and gets them, and he mentions he sort of gets him in position for the next day where he wants him to be, Colonel Kimsey. And now we get to the next scene of they're now preparing the rebels. They're getting ready. They're putting all the things in, and there's a little bit of like Clem is being charming towards Cinta, and Vel is either jealous or not liking that maybe Clem is like trying to like
I think
maneuver
Steve
his
earlier
way into
said
this.
that she's already sharing a blanket with somebody.
Oh, right. I didn't understand that, why they, like, I didn't understand that line, so I actually don't
It means she's
understand.
sleeping with somebody already.
No, but who was he talking about, Vel or?
I thought he was talking about Cinta.
Okay.
Maybe it was
So,
Val,
but
because it was kind of together. He was saying Val told me to do this,
oh,
but
right.
it's something like I saw you giving eyes to.
You know what? I just realized it could be maybe the Vel and Cinta are in a relationship,
Could be.
right? And it's not hit you over the head lesbian, like, but like, oh, we gotta shove in LGBTQ and we have to tell people all about it, how proud we are of including gay characters. I didn't think of it at all, and the fact that I just thought of it and it has no effect on me in terms of like, oh wow, okay, maybe they're just two gay characters, like that's how you want to do it. I mean, maybe that's, and maybe she's not jealous of Cassian, but she doesn't like Cinta getting close to Cassian because Cinta's her girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, they spent 5 months over there.
Yeah, and no, maybe they're just, yeah, and maybe they're sharing their blankets together. Dude, that's what it could be. Oh wow, I'm actually happy about this because, and not because like I care like either way whether they do all this or not, but like if you're gonna do this, then do it in a very more natural, organic way where it's just something that exists rather than like a political statement you're trying to make. That, like, I'm saying it from that point of view where if they're just like two lesbian characters who are just in a relationship, it's like so far it's not like, oh my god, they're lesbian. Hey, Ghostbusters 2016, remember that this girl's a lesbian. That's why she's making so many advances to all the girls. And it's just like, oh, maybe they're just in a relationship and she's getting jealous of that. Oh, that's great. I hope that happens. No, I really hope that happens. Just because people, other writers can learn from that. If you want to make it more open and like realistic, where you want to include LGBTQ characters, do it in a way where it's like way more natural and organic, rather than like, oh, look at us, where we're including LGBT, aren't we so progressive? But yeah, all right. So maybe that's what it is. I'm glad you mentioned that whole thing.
Let's just hope
But then why?
Twitter doesn't
But then
find out.
why? Yeah, and I just realized if Cinta and Vel are gay for each other, why would Vel care that it's a man hitting on Cinta? Maybe Cinta's bi,
Okay.
right? It could be. You never know.
Labels don't need to be like that closed off.
They're in Star Wars, so maybe they're just like pansexual, right? They alluded that the robot was in love with what's his name? Um,
Lando,
Lando. No, Han Solo.
Lando
Lando.
Calrissian. You're talking about in
La-
Solo, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, maybe that's what it is. They've shown heterosexual consensual relationship. They've alluded to interspecies. So maybe this is just, yeah, okay, we'll see. But yeah, but obviously there is a clear where she notices them developing a relationship, and it happens again later, which is why it's so obvious that they're trying to make a point of it. But okay, and again, we see Clem finds out that his stuff has been moved by Skeen, and Skeen's like, "Oh, your stuff was in the way," and Clem's like, "Dude, stop touching my stuff. What the hell is wrong with you?" And then Vel comes in and is like, "Hey, I thought you were checking on the comm." So that goes back to your first thing, that maybe Vel didn't tell him to go through his stuff, and he was just, because even at this moment, it's like Vel thought he was doing something else.
Well, this time he says it was in the way. I had to move it.
Well, no, like my point is like it's
yeah,
like
no, yeah, I get your point.
it's a
I'm saying
different
in this,
excuse,
in
but
this,
it's a part of the same thing.
yeah, I think so too. He's trying to clock him. He's trying to figure out what he's hiding, because he's like,
Yeah,
who comes with this little stuff? He's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"So wherever you left in a hurry because you've
yeah,
got
yeah,
nothing, you know. And
yeah.
this was one of the first scenes where I was like, okay, Diego
Mm,
Luna's acting was a bit okay. And he comes in, it's
yeah.
like, rabble, rabble, rabble,
Rabble,
rabble, rabble.
rabble, rabble.
you know,
Yes.
and he's also a
I
little
agree.
shorter than Steve and stuff, so he just
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
like,
yeah. I agree.
but like, yeah, it's a little bit okay.
I agree. Yeah. And so yeah, and then also what's her name? Vel is like, hey, and you can dress yourself from now on. So she's like, okay, stop hitting on Cinta. And yeah, and Terramin sort of has a look at Vel in his soldier uniform, and there's a hint at like obviously like, hey, we made a soldier out of you, and it's like, oh, Clem doesn't want to be a soldier; he wants to be a survivor. And now we get to our imperial office of Mira. Is now having a scene with her assistant, and they're trying to figure out a pattern of a rebellion that she's got a hunch on.
It's Space Ellen DeGeneres and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah. What?
Doesn't they
Oh
look
yeah,
like
that's true. Nightcrawler Jake Gyllenhaal, dude.
right?
He looks
Totally looks
exactly, now
like
that you mention it.
he looks like Jake Gyllenhaal's stunt double or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I just noticed that. I didn't realize that. I was like thinking, who does he remind me of, this guy? But yeah, you're right. And yeah, so they're just trying to figure that out. And this is a good example of a good working relationship, even though like she's had problems with her colleagues, but her assistant like kind of believes in her, you know. So that was a cool little nice touch. And one thing that they're talking about, they mentioned Jakku.
And Kessel.
Okay, I didn't realize the Kessel, but yeah, I
Kessel
was
is
like, oh, they
the thing
mentioned
that's
Jakku, the
maybe that
Kessel run, right?
they could be talking about the Kessel Run or maybe something else,
Mm,
because it's just a really famous place where the spice comes from.
right. Oh,
But
Kessel Fondor.
yeah, I think what was really interesting, I liked everything they were saying in terms of it's too random to be random, like
Right.
these.
I wrote that down as well.
And is this, wait, I think it was it here? I don't remember who said it, but there was that line. I think it was earlier when Mauser, what's his I don't know why
Oh,
today I can't remember any of the guy's names, so I'm gonna go without
it's
nicknames.
4 a.m. It's okay.
But yeah, but I think it's him who says it, where he's like, "What's the best way to rule, through one big incident or through huge amount of incidents which you can't see past, and like you can't notice the takeover. And yeah, I totally butchered that line just now. I don't know. I should have written it down. I had it
I have no
earlier in
idea
my.
what you're talking about, but
Yeah, that's
I
why I
think you
wish
might have seen. I think you might have seen episode 6 as
I
well,
have
and you
not.
might be referencing
You're saying that again. I have
that
not seen episode 6. There's a
because I have no
moment
idea.
he's talking about how the empire works, and they're talking about rather a big amount of incidents to slowly take over. Anyways, and then in this one they're talking about how, yeah, if I was them, this is how I would do it. I would do
Yeah, I would spread it
completely
out.
come hit them from so many different parts that like you can't tell what is the actual move that's being done, because there are so many moves happening at the same time. And at the same time,
Never climb the same fence twice.
yeah, it gives you the question of, okay, was Luthen again? Was Luthen actually looking for the device? Was he told Andor he wasn't, but maybe he was? Is he like, is that his thing that these other like incidents are going on? Are they actually related? Is that the beginning of the rebellion? Who is behind it? Is it the uncle? So many questions of like, this opens up, like it makes it immediately seem like, okay, this is much bigger than this small little mission that we're doing. There's more going on. This rebellion is starting. And I don't know if what I would like better, if they're referencing Solo and other things we've seen already, or if they're setting up that there's been more things going on, and we're about to see it's going to expand. That would be the beauty of this, if like we're going from this one small town and now we're just expanding the web further and further, and we find out that it's just like a huge giant web of the rebellion trying to break the empire from the
Yeah,
inside.
and we're being introduced it from, like you said, from the inside out through Andor.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what's happening. Like we're being and not just that, we're being introduced to Star Wars. Like we started off really grounded in like this dirty town that seems very like normal to us, and then slowly by slowly now we're like getting introduced to the Empire and the Imperials and Coruscant, and then they're talking about magic that's about to come, like magical stuff, you know.
But at the same
So
time,
yeah,
if you had never seen Star Wars and you saw these 5 episodes, and the next thing you see is somebody coming, making a bunch of rocks float, making someone like change his mind and bring out a laser sword, they were like, "What the fuck?"
that's yeah. So
Wait,
so
how
that
did we
was
get
one of my
there?
questions of my question in the beginning about that was that like if someone who's never seen Star Wars, because Star Wars to us actually, like at its core, the OG Star Wars is lightsabers, Jedi's, and all this other stuff, right? And this is so far from that, but it's sort of going in that direction where if you really think about it, where we started from at on Marloni to where Star Wars is supposed to end in terms of Jedi's and lightsabers and all these Siths and all this crazy, like super fantastical, supernatural things. And you're like, whoa, man, like in this giant universe, there's these little stories that are also taking place that sort of join into this bigger, huger picture of like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. And like
That's
they
the
seem like
beauty
so
of it.
much bigger, so much bigger characters than what we know them as.
But the beauty of it is they just like they rolled it back to the beginning of like, okay, let's strip
Yeah,
it all down to just like base level. What is it like in this universe to just exist?
yeah,
And now they're building this up over the next few seasons to end in
yeah.
Rogue One, which is the grand finale to it.
Right,
And then we go into A New Hope, which
right,
introduces you into what it means to be a Jedi with the
right,
magic and all of that, which is like,
right.
that way it's actually a beautiful idea to like start so low
Amazing.
and then take you
Yeah,
up there. And it's already, they know where it's going. So
yeah.
all they have to do is connect the dots right now.
And they're sort of like filling in the gaps of
Yeah.
like and just filling it like with beautiful, beautiful details and minutia. It's amazing. And it's not just like worthless details. It's not
Yeah.
like just random shit that they just put details in for it. Like it's most of it is like it you learn a little more about the world or the characters through every single detail. None of it seems random, or they're Easter eggs where it's not like prequels where it's like I just want all this cool shit to be in there just for it to be in there, and none of it actually means anything.
Yeah.
Everything's like dense for for being dense rather than actually having any substance to it. So yeah, and yeah, and then they agree to do 2 more files, and then she takes her migraine medicine, and they get on with their work. And that's so relatable because I took my migraine medicine as well today. Sponsored by Excedrin. Please sponsor us.
Yeah. I like the fact that he was like, "Oh, if you're going to be here, I'm not going home.
I'm gonna take my medicine."
You're onto something. You
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Cool.
And next we get to where we get to. Yeah, we get to the bonfire bond sesh, where now we have a nice little, which is how episode 4 also ended. They were having a nice little bonfire, and now instead of eating, they're all taking a sip. And again, right when Clem is passing the flask to Cinta, I think Vels like comes in right in the middle and takes the flask from her or from him. It's like, okay, she's definitely not liking the relationship that's building in between Cinta and Cass, which we'll find out later why that is. Like either she's interested in Cass or she's interested in Cinta, or maybe she's just interested in Cinta, right? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're not together, but she's just in love with her or something.
I love how into this you're getting.
I love it because I didn't think about
forgetting
this.
all about Cyril now. Now it's about this.
I know.
I have a whole thesis about this next episode.
Yeah. And then they sort of do cheers to the rebellion. And I don't know if this was on purpose or not, but it's only Vel and Nemec who say to the rebellion. Nobody else says it because maybe just for the two of them, it's about the rebellion, and all the others have their own personal rebellion. So they may have just done it internally.
I mean, is there a rebellion yet? Again, it's still just the path. Yeah. We still haven't. We've never gotten really the beginning of the rebellion. Some would be like this. We're starting this. Like we had in Obi-Wan, they set up the path, which was something basically they were starting off the rebellion. But that's still there's still a huge gap between the two, which I wonder if I thought the show would be that, but I guess it could also be that, like, yeah, if it's been going on since Obi-Wan, I don't know the time difference, but I think it's about another 20 years, 10, 20 years, I guess. It has to be something like that. I know they specifically said it with his age and everything. It's 10 years after the third, like episode 3. But anyways.
All right. And also the small little detail, I think the bonfire that they're having, it's like, I think they're the model of the armory that they built. That's burning. So that's clearly foreshadowing something.
Oh, you think that's what it was?
Oh yeah. That's totally what it is. And then there's a small little montage of them making their trek. They're leaving their base camp and now they're off to their next spot. And now we get to my favorite, another scene of Edie, that's Cyril's mom. Even her name, everything about her is so like comedic and in such a like a depressing manner. And she's just again berating him. And they're going on about, she's talking about her conversation with Uncle Jack Harlow. And this is where we get to know that he was in the police. Cyril, that whole thing, corporals and everything, that's basically the police.
Yeah.
And he's like, and that wasn't Cyril's, I think, choice and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, yeah, because Uncle Jack knows me so well. And it's like you're talking to like a teenager, that he's still like arrested development. That's literally what it is. And then so yeah, that's basically the whole thing. It's the same thing where she's just like berating him and making him feel worse. And then what I love about this scene is like just from like a cinematography thing where it's like it's zoomed in on their faces while they're talking, and then suddenly they just cut to like that long shot from far away, and you just see how dingy their apartment is, where they're sitting in this tiny little booth with that's the only lights that are on, and everything else around them is dark. And there's like in the corner there's like an R2D2 looking type droid.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it kind of looks like that, but yeah, it just looks like so sad and like Yeah, I think take a shot every time I've said the word depressing, and you'll be smashed at the end of this. But yeah, so they sort of talk about like how he doesn't have any prospects, blah blah blah, and he's yeah. I think I've said I've mentioned too much about it. And the next scene, now we get to
He's still not. That's
well,
not that. That's later when he looks at Andor, I guess. It's the last time we
no,
catch
no,
the
no.
show.
So again, like I mentioned, so this is the middle of the day. This is or the evening. So we saw them at the beginning of the day when they're eating cereal. But no,
He's
but
still
he
eating
sort of
cereal.
pushes the cereal or
No, he's
something.
still
Yeah, he's
eating
still
cereal
eating
because
cereal,
it's all
right?
mushy
Yeah.
and
So
stuff.
maybe it's the same thing. Yeah. I think it's the same day. It's clearly the same day, but it's not the whole like. I thought it would have been more interesting for them to show like day, evening, night, but I guess it's just day and night. What's happening? But yeah, so now they're just making their trek, and Vel's testing Clem on answers, and Clem's like, okay, now my turn. Tell me about Lieutenant Gorn. And we get to know that Gorn basically fell in love with one of the Eldanis, and then the Empire. She's like, and then he lost the woman, and now he lost his taste for the Empire. And then she says, everyone has their own rebellion. So it's nice to see that everyone has like it's not like not everyone is like Luthen where it's like, hey, you want to fight for something greater than Issa and blah blah blah. And it's like one guy in for
Everybody has their own
revenge, one
cause.
guy. Yeah, and it's all like super simple and personal. Where one guy just fell in love with the girl and she got taken away by the Empire, and now he hates the Empire.
That's why
It's
I like
super
that saying
understandable.
actually much better because I feel like it's more original and
Yeah,
it's so much more relatable. It's something you can apply to
yeah,
everything. There's so many people I can say that to. Is like all you have is
exactly.
your own little rebellion.
Yeah, and
It's
and
something
and it's
I'm definitely
like
going to remember and want to keep and want to act like I came up with in the future.
yeah.
People that haven't seen the show will make me look all sorts of smart.
Everyone has their own rebellion. So you have to say it in that voice too.
Yeah, bro. Hey, you drop that on somebody at a party or something, or just
They were
even like
like,
while you just hang out.
damn.
You're like, God damn, did you just come up with that? I'm like,
Goddamn.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm glad you don't like Star Wars. Yeah. But yeah, and it's like it's so much easier to like empathize with them. Where sure you sort of empathize with Luthen about we know how bad the Empire is and all that stuff, but when someone just tells you a small little story, personal story that this is why you're like, okay, I get it. Like I feel for you now. I have compassion for you, and I understand what's at stake for you when you're fighting this fight.
Yep.
So yeah, and it doesn't have to be super complicated or super grand. It's just very simple, and yeah, we get on with our characters and make them a lot more interesting and fleshed out than other side characters would be in other shows and stuff.
And same time has us again wondering about Endor because it seemed like she wasn't sure he was going to be able to learn all of that overnight, but apparently he did.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not just
And
a random
now,
guy.
yeah. And now we come back to Lieutenant Gorn, and you guessed it, he's reprimanding two employees about something not being painted. And again, he sort of tells them, he's like, I want you down here tomorrow during the Eye of Aldani getting that thing painted. And again, these are Imperial officers who just look at each other and they're sort of like, hey sir, can we ask you something? Like, can we be up there? Like, no one wants to really come to Aldani, but at least they say like you might be lucky to see of the, and for morale, it's like, oh, it's like a regular office where you have to worry about like employee morale and all this kind of thing. And even Lieutenant Gorn's like, he comes across as a compassionate leader within the Imperial Army. Where he's like, okay, cool, you guys can be upstairs, but be here day after tomorrow. And obviously, we know that he's just manipulating everything to fit the plan and have everyone be up there and have his little people be down here. But it's like he's so convincing to them that not only does he have them positioned in a place, he has them thinking it's their choice and that he's allowing them to be in that position, and that they're not only fearing him, but they're also respecting him for being so understanding and compassionate towards their tiny little needs. Where it's like we've seen what a strict Imperial office looks like, seeing where the chief, how he was talking to Blevin and Mira. But now you see on a tiny little smaller level where it's like, oh, it's like people are a lot more nicer to each other and they can talk to each other, where Mira or Blevin wouldn't even dare question the Imperial chief like that, right? He just like straight up, like, he's concise, he says only what's necessary, and he says, we're done here. And then the moment he leaves, you see Mira like, oh my God, thank God he's gone. Like, that was scary as fuck. Like, with these guys, it's like, hey boss, hey boss, can we please be up there for the Aldani? He's like, all right, be here down here day after tomorrow. It just seems like that, even though they're and it just seems like so human of them, which is great.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also he mentions, I forgot to mention this. He says, I prepared a reduced schedule for tomorrow. This is the third mention of a schedule. So I'm definite that's part of the themes. Okay. And yeah, I wrote that down as well. I'm looking at my notes and I say mentions schedule again. So now we get to the next scene. We see Lieutenant Gorn has done his part of getting all the employees in the position that he wants them to be for the plan to work. And now we get a look. We see a small look at the actual armory. We're like, oh, this is what they're going in to steal. So not only do we know, like, we've seen the layout from the perspective of the rebels who are like with the models and everything. Now we've seen it from the inside, where this is the location we're gonna be in tomorrow. Tomorrow, hopefully, if all plan goes to schedule, according to schedule. But
And
from
again,
what
very
they've
smartly
mentioned in
they-
this episode so far, I don't think the plan is going to go according to schedule next episode.
But again, very smartly done. Where if you look at it on face value, these different scenes with him seem so mundane, and you almost wonder at first, like, what's the point? But then, like you said,
Yeah.
there's very much a point, because, like you said, he's positioning them, and you're getting Trojan horse style taught the layout
Mhm.
for.
Yeah.
So next time when you come in here, it's not like
It's
you're
yeah,
here for the first time. You've
Yeah,
seen these
exactly.
environments already. You kind of understand the
Yeah,
purpose
the layout
this.
of it all. Yeah, exactly. Every scene has a point in the show. Every dialogue, every line has a point, which is what makes it so great.
And again,
It all
respects
has a
the
purpose.
audience. It thinks
Yes,
it,
yes.
it assumes the audience is smart enough to keep up.
Yes, yes. It's not patronizing towards the audience or like condescending, where they have to mention to you that, hey, look at us, aren't we so cool that we're connecting the A and the B plot? After watching 5 episodes of Andor, I hate that line even more. You sort of convinced me in the beginning that it may have been okay, but now I hate it so much more because I'm like, this is how you should be doing
You
it.
need to finish that thing.
Yes, we'll
Now
do
that I've
a
thought
season
about
review
I
of it.
think She-Hulk is definitely maybe like top 2, top 3 best Marvel shows out there. They completely
Whoa,
stuck the
really?
landing. That ending made the entire show
Okay,
like
I haven't seen it,
so much better. It
okay,
explained like everything, every motivation, characters,
Alright,
everything you questioned makes so much more
Okay.
sense after the finale. We're like, now I get
Right.
it. It all was perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Alright, we'll do a season review of She-Hulk.
We
Look
have
out for that. Yeah. Right. So now we get to the next scene of what's his name? Your boy Steve, and they're all just sort of resting. They're sort of like massaging their feet, and it's like, oh yeah, they would be tired, right, from walking so much. They're regular people, so they're just taking a break. And suddenly we get. First, I thought he was just joking around, right? Because that's what he did with Skeen. Puts a knife to Clem's throat. He's like, "Don't move," and that's exactly how he was introduced when he was doing that to Nemec. But to Nemec, it was like a thing. Like he was like telling him, "Hey, don't fall asleep." But here he actually is like, don't move. And he pulls out the Sky Kyber crystal. And he's like, here it is. And everybody's in shock. He's like, I knew it. And he confronts Clem in front of everyone. He's like, what's a thief bringing such a thing? It's supposed to be 30,000 credits. And what the hell is going on? We don't know anything about you.
He's like, why would someone bring something so expensive to a heist?
To a robbery.
So something so valuable to a robbery. Like,
yeah. Why would you bring treasure to a robbery or something like that? Yeah. And another. So yeah, so this is a very important scene. So we'll talk a little bit about this. Where so here basically I'll just tell you this. I'll just mention the scene where Clem confronts. Sorry, Steve. Teen confronts Clem about why does he have a sky kyber crystal and what's his actual motives. And Clem, to his credit, I don't know if it's to his credit or not, but he just straight up is like, you know what, I'm in for the money. And actually his reasoning behind it is very good,
Yeah.
because the day before is always hard because you have too much time to worry and too much time to get scared. And Termin's like, what, you think we're scared? And he's like, I know you're scared. And then
I
he
mean,
mentions a very cool one. Yeah.
I think his
Go
reasoning
ahead.
was really just, I don't want to have to be looking up over my back,
Yeah.
over my shoulder,
Right.
like while I'm doing this. I won't need to be able to trust you
Yeah.
guys if you want to pull this off, because he still doesn't believe they're going to be able to do it.
Right.
Where it's first, it seems like, oh, this seems kind of out of character for him to just like straight up tell him why he's there. But
Yeah.
again, at the same time, I guess I don't know. I guess this time it's really just why he's there. I don't know if there's another
Yeah.
reason, but yeah.
He just straight up like, you know what, I'm in for the money. It's great. Like whatever.
I like
And
that everybody was just kind of like, all right, I guess. Why didn't you tell us before? It was
yeah,
just kind of like,
and
okay, we get it. We would have.
exactly. And I like that everybody was more upset with Vel not
Yeah.
divulging this information to them rather than
I
questioning Clem's motives.
actually felt almost like it made Clem's knowledge more acceptable, because they're like, okay,
Right.
you're literally hired for this job.
Yeah.
So you must have been like the right guy for the job. So the
Exactly.
reason you know all this stuff is because you were specifically hired for this position.
Right. And the fact that you have a sky kyber crystal as like maybe a down payment, that okay, maybe you know what the hell you're talking about.
And you're getting paid big money for this.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Vel sort of like, hey, sorry, it was like the choice was like either get him or call it off, and blah blah blah. And then Clem's like, okay, the day before, too much time to worry. And Term is like, maybe you're the one who's afraid. And he goes, of course I'm afraid, but there is a difference between being scared and losing your nerve, which I was like, wow, I've actually never thought of that. And that's a very cool thing for him to mention, and he says, most people, if you're losing your nerve, if you want to call it off, but don't use me as an excuse, where it's almost like, you're scared and you're losing your nerve. So now you're just finding excuses to get out of an appointment or something like that, where subconsciously you wanted to get out of it. And now you're just like finding reasons to do it. And yeah. One very small sad thing about this was seeing Nemik's actual disappointment, because Nemik was the one in the beginning who was like, I trust him, I can feel that he totally believes in the cause. And now he's like, wait, you were in it just for the money? And it's like he's like heartbroken. I was like, oh, I feel so bad. That's why I'm like, it's obvious that Nemik is going to die because of Clem, and Clem's going to have a huge impact.
You realize it's like, shit, am I the
Yeah.
first one to die in the story?
Exactly.
It's like he was about to look
He's
at
like,
the camera. It's like, fuck.
Oh my god.
I
Come on.
just realized who I
Dan.
am. I'm a
Dan,
rich.
come on, Dan. Don't do me dirty, Dan. And yeah, and a small little thing again about Vel's leadership. One thing about that was important was that in the beginning, Clem pulls his gun out on Skeen, and Terramin pulls his gun out on Clem. So it's almost like that shootout moment. Well, he's like, yeah,
cowboy stance, which I love.
Right, exactly.
That stance,
but he's like, don't move, buddy.
With the hand behind his back, and
yeah,
very dope. Well, it totally it gave me a lot of Western vibes in this entire episode.
A standoff moment,
and not just this, like with the bonfire and the way that everything. It felt like this could have been a bunch of people back in the Old West as well.
Old West,
which again goes back to that's what Star Wars is referencing, always old Westerns and samurai movies.
Old Westerns in space.
Which like Westerns are rips-offs of old samurai movies. Anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Stop it.
That's what George Lucas would have said.
Uh, he's he's no longer attached to this.
Still, I'm using that line whenever
I know,
it's
I know, I know.
applicable for
Right, of
Star Wars
course,
because it's
dude.
like poetry. It rhymes.
But yeah. So also, like the point is that that situation could have gotten way out of hand, and Vel handles it and diffuses the situation. So that's another great show of her leadership, where she's like, hey, you can kill each other tomorrow, but right now we're getting our shit to the point. And she's like, okay, everybody respects her, and they go stand down, you know. So that was another good moment of her leadership. And she even says to Skeen, where she's like, hey, you got a problem, you come talk to me. So she shows that she's open to everybody's inputs and all their employees' grievances,
When the
which is how a
rebellion
good
has their
boss should be.
annual leadership awards, I'm sure she's going to get a nomination, at least an honorable mention.
Well, Luthen questions her leadership, like in the beginning when he shouts at her.
Yeah, but he isn't there.
No, but he knows. And another thing,
Well,
but
that's
I
right. I said she's
we'll
going to
get
get
into that. We'll get into that
nominated
later.
or mentioned. She's not
I,
winning.
I think she'll win it. I think she'll win it.
Well, you don't know. You don't know. There might be other
I'm
leaders
pretty
out
sure
there.
she'll win it. She's a really good boss, but maybe she's too weak. Maybe that's her downfall.
What, because she's a woman?
Come on, man, stop it.
Yeah, you're the one calling her weak.
No, it's because of her actions.
Okay.
Stop it. Don't bait me into this. You're gonna get canceled before we're number 2. Come on. All right. So yeah. So now we get to nighttime Coruscant, and we're in the car with Mon Mothma and Perrin. And I wanted to, before we get into the scene, I just wanted to ask you, what do the graphics look like to you, like from how
Now,
compared
this
to like the
time,
daytime?
exactly the same graphics, but with the angles, it gave me much more episode 2 vibes when Anakin is jumping from the cars and so on. Where like it has to be that they're trying to keep it still in universe, and they're like the last time we saw Coruscant,
Right.
and
It looked like this.
these traffic cars, like they're not going okay. The graphics are, it's I feel like it's not that it's an old school render. It's just like they designed it in a way that it still makes sense if you were
They
to put
want
it
to.
next to
I think they
Coruscant.
want to stay faithful and loyal to information that already exists,
Yeah,
and not sort of. And I think as much as like whatever you say, whatever we may say about George Lucas, but as like older writers, because Tony Gilroy, Tan Gilroy, they're like much older. So I think they have, because they have respect for the show. They're not making anything cynically. They're actually paying respect and homage to every Star Wars detail, and not being cynical about the whole fantasy aspect of it, where they're like trying to distance themselves from Star Wars. They're very proud of Coruscant, and
yeah,
I think they're like, hey, you know what? George Lucas created this, and we're gonna respect his
exactly,
vision and the way he depicted it. We're not gonna
exactly.
try and say like, hey, George Lucas, this is what you did. We can do it much better. It's like, no, we're trying to just tell stories in the universe you created, and we respect you for doing whatever you have. I think that's what it is.
And the Coruscant from the movies will always be the prime version of it
Yeah,
because it's the movie
exactly.
version of it. It's the first
Yeah,
version of it. So they know anything
exactly.
that, like making it anything else would just make you not be able to make the connection that like, oh, we're back
Right,
in that same place that we were in the prequels.
right,
So I think
right.
it's definitely, it has to be a deliberate choice.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's a deliberate choice, but I think this is the
yeah,
reasoning behind it.
right. Exactly. All right. So now we get into the scene, and also the first thing I wrote down was Blade Coruscant, because this like the nighttime actually was straight up like Blade 2048 and even Blade Runner 2048. Even
I
the
like this
background
too.
music, it becomes like that, like like where it's like super sci-fi.
Before the car comes in and they're just showing the
Yeah,
city and stuff. It looked really
yeah,
dope.
yeah, yeah. And we get into the car and we get into a very mundane conversation about a husband and wife, where it's sort of like a payback, because we've seen Mon Mothma always lose the battle between her arguments with Perrin. And even in the earlier scene where she's like, hey, Perrin, are you enjoying this? And Perrin sort of comes out as the winner between her and her daughter, like where he's the better parent. So now this is sort of like a nice payback for her, where she's like, oh, you had no, like, it must be embarrassing for you not to know what I'm up to, but the other dude, like the general, knows everything that I'm doing. And he's like, "Oh, why didn't you tell me?" She's like, "I didn't think you would be interesting because it's
No, I don't.
charitable.
I don't think that's
It's a
what.
nice
I mean,
little."
for me personally, I thought it was. They were more hinting at the fact that he doesn't know what she's actually up to. They were
Mm,
talking about she was doing something on the hush hush again, and he's like, "Are
mm,
you going to tell me what this is about?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't think you would even care." She's just trying to play
yeah,
it off to be like, like she knows that he will not approve, and she doesn't know if she can trust him with this information. Like she can't even trust her own husband
I
with
think
what
it's a
she's
little
doing.
bit of both.
Maybe. I guess
Well,
there's
well,
also
well,
they also skipped a dinner that was mentioned in the last episode that had to have happened in
yeah,
between the two, where they
yeah.
mentioned actually a very big character that she was going to meet, who was someone who
Mm,
was, I think actually, I don't know if they were married, but I feel like she had a kid with Emperor Palpatine. Forgot the name of the character now, but there's someone big where I remember I didn't mention it last episode, but someone else had mentioned it. And I was like, oh yeah, shit. That seemed like that was like an important meeting, and I guess they just skipped it. And I wonder if that's what they were talking about here. If this was like
mm,
the after, like this is just them coming back, and he's being like, "Yeah, so like what the hell are you even talking about?" And
right.
she's trying to keep him in the dark. Is what I was getting more out of this, more than
I
like I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of both, where she might be trying to keep him in the dark, but also I think just like on a very personal level, that I think she truly, to me, looked hurt by her daughter, and her daughter thinking that she's not a good mother and that parent is a better father, and that parent, because she, right before she walks out of that breakfast moment, she looks at she tells parent, it's actually, I really appreciate the support, like sarcastically, where I think, and now it's like the way she smiles and everything, it's like almost like in a snide way telling him like, oh, like, you wouldn't be interested in something charitable, would you, parent? And
I
parent's like,
guess
oh, okay,
I
yeah.
just because
And
I
he
expect
feels
them
like
to go
embarrassed.
away later anyways. I feel like there's
Yeah.
not a I don't see them as like the very much husband and wife connection. I feel like they're just I see her using the husband and the kid just as a front. They're just a cover at this
I
point.
don't I don't believe that. I think they're adding more to her character, on like, just like, okay, she's involved in all this spy stuff, but also she has, like, she may have gotten married to parent as a front, but now has a daughter with him, and she cares about the daughter, and she just has like regular mundane problems with her husband, and how she's trying to juggle those two things, where she has to look believable in portraying this marriage, but at the same time, like, she's involved in all this, and yeah. But we'll see. And there's a nice little setup and payoff with the driver Cloris. He's like, "What was the name of the driver again? You mentioned it." He's like, "Cloris." He's like, "Wait,
Wh-
Cloris, please take the
Where
expressway."
again, I feel like it's all just setting up that like her husband is not part of this, and she doesn't want him to be.
Oh no, no, like that's totally there.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I
no, I
think
get it.
there
I
is
get it.
that other personal relationship layer to them, where, because if that was the only thing, I feel like it would be something that the show hasn't done, which is show their characters to be one dimensional, where they're only about this one thing. I think from what they've shown for each character is that they're about this one thing, but also they have like their own personal stuff that they're dealing with, and each of them has a different kind of thing that they're dealing with. Where she's stuck in upper class, so she has to deal with this, and he's stuck here, and he has to deal with that. I think it's both of it. And yeah, so now we are back. Now we're just like sort of seeing them approaching the garrison. Our rebels, they're approaching the garrison at night, and they're talking about what's his name? One second, my thing is stuck. Hold on. Yeah. Nemix Clem's like, hey, okay, so here you go. You keep mentioning that, where Clem's like, hey, Nemec, it looks exactly like your model. And Nemec's like, well, it should. We've been sneaking up here for months. So,
Took 4 months to make it. I'm telling you. But
right,
this is also where the one guy stands there with the flame,
exactly.
and the guy's like, "Got you,"
That's later, yeah.
and
That, I
then
mean, 2 seconds later, yeah.
she's like, "All right, that's enough," and he still stands there
That
for
that's later.
another.
That's later. That's later. First, we get back
Still,
to the main scene. What? What's that?
My point is, he stands there for way too long. Way too.
Oh,
Somebody
right.
must have seen that shit.
But no, but that comes later though. Like that scene hasn't happened yet.
I mean, anyways.
Yeah.
There's no use of me repeating it later.
No, that scene hasn't happened. Like first
I know,
we get
but
to the
I'm saying
garrison.
that
Yeah.
I started saying the thing. It doesn't make sense me repeating this again later. I basically said the entire thing already. Might as well finish my point.
All right. All right, and now we get to the main scene that we were talking earlier, where with Cyril looking at, he's sitting back in his room at night now, and he's looking at the hologram of Cass, and you can see like his hatred built towards Cass, and it's amazing how they've sort of made it so that Cass has become like the arch nemesis of Cyril rather than the other way around, where Cyril's like has this thing built towards Cass. Like normally it's the antagonist becomes the nemesis, but here it's like I'm kind of rooting for Cyril to catch Cass and get his revenge on him. And yeah.
There's some clone trooper action figures in the background.
I was gonna mention that too. I was waiting for you to say whatever you wanted to say, and then I was like, and it's even the way the shot is framed, it's like lined up perfectly with you see Cyril's head, Cass's thing, and then the two little troopers or soldiers, toy soldiers at least. So you can see that maybe as a kid also he may have like fantasized about being in the army and becoming a soldier when he grows up, and maybe he was just like a regular insecure kid.
We've seen Imperial toys before, in specifically Rogue One.
In Rogue One, oh right, okay, no.
When what's her name? The main girl, when she's running away from her dad.
Oh right.
She has a stormtrooper puppet.
Right. Well, maybe it's like yeah, we'll see what that's all about. But it was a nice.
Probably nothing. It's just an Easter egg.
No, I think it'll be a build. I think it'll be a thing of his character where we'll get to know not obviously why he has those figurines, but like him having those figurines adds to his character in some way or the other. I'm sure to his backstory. Yeah. And now we get to the scene you were talking about, where you see Lieutenant Gorn seeing through his binoculars, and Termin waving the light, the fire, and he says, "Okay,"
long, and it's way too bright,
yeah,
and it's way too big. Yeah. It's an entire army base with loads of fucking soldiers. No one, like the just to think that even if no one saw it, just to not worry that somebody just like might go out for a cigarette or something, and just like, wait a minute,
hey, what's going on over there?
That's a bright ass light up there.
Hey, Lieutenant, do you see that light? Hey, Lieutenant, I just came up for a cigarette to enjoy the view, and someone's, I think, flashing a light. Maybe we should go check that out.
And then they like, and the fact that she tells him like, all right, that's enough, and he still stands there in the background.
Yeah.
For like 2 more seconds. He'll keep going. And I'm like, bro, are you not understanding? You've spent 5 months doing nothing. Now don't ruin your fucking procrastination in this one moment by just being stupid about it. Also, I realized they did a lot of things in this episode to keep the whole squad. Like there's a lot of shots where they keep them out of focus, which I thought was interesting, where like there we lose the focus of him, but he's still present there. There's a moment when Mouse and Andor are talking earlier, and there's also like like Andor is listening while the other guy's talking, but Andor is in focus while they're both in the shot. Right. And I wonder if that was something consciously chosen. Like they were using a soft focus throughout these scenes in Scotland, especially around the camp. But I wonder if it was on purpose to make it seem that like we don't really know these people. We don't fully understand them. They're still a bit out of focus for us because we just have had these little glimpses that we only gotten the information they've given us. But we don't know, is that information true? Is it just what they want us to know? Is it like, we really don't know. Like, again, can't trust anybody.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, that's very interesting. And how they're visually also trying to portray information and tell us and just keep us guessing and keep us more intrigued in what's going to happen next, how the world's going to be built up more, and what kind of characters are we going to be introduced to more. And yeah, so it was during this time where during the scene where I realized, okay, so this is probably the course of one day, and we see how like people either go from point A to point B, or this was just my interpretation, and how Cyril starts from point A and ends up right at point A because he's back in a rut, and his character like just stays stagnant because that's what his life is when he's with his mother. That's why he wanted to get out and do his own thing, I think. That's just my tiny little interpretation of that. And now we get to a very important scene where Vel tells Keen to apologize and to talk about his actual backstory, where he talks about his brother being sort of driven out of, he was a farmer and he was sort of driven out and he committed suicide because of it, because of the Imperials. And he tells Clem, he's like, that's the closest you're gonna get to an apology. And Clem's like, hey, close enough. And Clem would relate to this because he has a sibling connection to it as well. So we see Keen and Clem's bond from the beginning of the episode, how it goes like this, goes down, and then now it's back up, where now they're like thicker than before.
And a bit symbolic again for the title, because his brother was farming trees.
Right. Pepper farmer, pepper trees. He says, what kind of trees? Pepper trees. That's true. Oh, that's pretty good. I didn't think of that.
And again, it was a little bit, Diego Luna's acting was a little bit on the nose again, when he's like, oh,
oh,
your brother? Oh no, oh, that sounds bad. But I did like the whole thing of like, this is the closest to an apology you're gonna get, and he's like, close enough.
Close enough, and he sort of smirks to it, so we get.
So there's another thing where throughout the episode, if you notice, Andor keeps refusing to drink whenever they pass him something to drink, and it's kind of to show that like he is not there for their belief. He's trying to separate them from them, for himself from them, because he's trying to make clear that like, you guys are here for this mission. That's not me. But then after this, he finally sits down and he shares a drink with everybody to show that like, okay, I feel like now I can be part of this group.
That's a good observation. But he does, I think, have a sip of that drink though when they cheers earlier to the rebellion, and he passes it to Cinda.
Are you sure? But like also he's like refused to have it.
No, he takes a sip and then he offers it to
the milk, that one.
The gray milk he spits out, and he's like, oh my god, and then he throws it away. Yeah, but that's still pretty. Like I understand what like I actually didn't think about that. How like he still feels like an outsider, where in the sense like even though they're all working towards this big goal, to the same goal, and they seem like way more. Obviously, they spent all the time together, but he's not even trying to become a part of that family. And he's mentioning like, I know you're trying to get me in, but I'm only here to do a job, and I'm not trying to get emotionally attached to any of you.
I think he was trying to make that very clear. But like now they're symbolically trying to show that like, no, okay,
right,
we were doing this as a squad. He's not just here trying to save
as a squad.
Life.
Yeah, I agree. And a small little thing I kind of liked was that there's like all this transparency between each other, while like, and it's a cool contrast to like the whole spy thing that they're doing, because that's the opposite of transparency. And I just thought that was a cool touch. I don't know if that means anything. And this was another great example of a great show of Vel's leadership, where she, and it's complete contrast to how Imperial Chief Officer, where there's a disagreement or like a co-worker feud, an interpersonal office problem, the way he handles it, he's like, I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to respect your seniors. Now go do your jobs. End of story. She's like, no, you have to go apologize, and you have to go, and we have to work as a squad, and we have to become together. And she succeeds in all these things, where she gets everyone to listen to her, and now they are closer together and they are working as a team. I think that's very cool. Especially like her like leadership comes into question earlier, with her not telling everyone that he's just a mercenary, and she's like able to redeem herself by the end, and people still respect her. So yeah. And we also a small little thing where Skeen talks about an Imperial prefect drove him out. So we sort of get a connection to that dude at Marlana who wants to just be prefect, and now we're like, oh, okay, cool little setup and payoff to we're understanding a little more about the titles of these kind of people and how he has a personal connection to someone like that. And yeah, so now we get to Vel puts Teramin in charge, and she goes off with Cinta to do her own part of the plan. She's like, no farewells tonight. We got a lot to do. And yeah, and now we get to the last scene with we finally see our man Luthen, and he's checking some stuff. And this is the first time we see a relation dynamic shift between him and Clea, because right now we've just seen her as his assistant. We obviously know that she's in on it, but she seemed like she was working for him, and he always seemed like this authoritative figure person in charge because he was giving Mon Mothma orders as well. This is the first time we see him nervous and vulnerable, and Clea sort of giving him orders, and in a way where either she's in charge or they're both like on the same level of the
Well, she's not
leadership.
ordering around. She's just like, I don't like seeing you worried, and she's just giving him a straight. Well, like there's nothing you can do. It's going to happen.
Yeah,
and it's like she's not telling him like, yo, you fucking put that shit down and listen to me. She's just being like reasonable with him. But it's just like I've
no,
seen
like
you long
in
enough.
in terms of like what we knew of her as like his assistant, and now she's sort of more on his level, like the way she talks him, like obviously not ordering him, but like she's just like, hey, I thought you were gonna put that. She's almost talking to him like she's his wife in a sense.
I like that she's like, prepare the bag, and she's like, I don't
Yeah,
like seeing you worried like this.
I like that too. And yeah, they're just.
But again, I think
and
it
he's
was more. I don't know. I feel like we didn't see her at all in the last episode. She was basically just distracted the one dude. Where like now it's just, it shows that like they've been. I think they're trying to point out they've been together long enough. Where she's just like, I know you. I've seen you, and this is not
right.
you. And I
Yeah.
really like the line of like, it's going to be over tomorrow. And it's like, maybe it's just
Or
starting.
it'll just be starting.
No,
That's straight up what made me realize the whole 3-episode arc, where I'm like, okay, cool, I get, like, I totally
and
am on
again,
board
it's
with
kind
what
of
you're up
like
to.
a double entendre. It's the beginning of the rebellion.
Yeah, and to your title of episode 3, your title of episode 3, a great end to a great premiere. Where now it'll be like a great blah blah blah. It'll carry on in that same way. Yeah.
And that's it.
And yeah, man. And now we just sort of go zoom out, and that last scene out of the window looks kind of like a Boba Fett helmet eyes, I think, to me. And it made me think of that line, you know, eyes are the windows to the soul. I think that's the phrase. All right.
So because you still think Luthen is going to turn into Boba Fett.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's gonna have like a nephew or something. That's gonna be Jango Fett.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah. It might happen. And yeah, man, that was our episode.
Credits.
Where yeah,
that's
credits.
episode 5. Andor. The Axe Forgets.
Oh, and also we forgot to mention that he's nervous about Vel in a sense, because he's like, Vel's the only one who's supposed to trace back, which again made me think that I think Vel might be like his adoptive daughter, sort of like the relationship between Marva and Cass.
But it also, he said, what's the issue? And it's the thief. It's like,
Yeah,
maybe I didn't do it right, because he understands that he put this one variable that he's not even sure about, this last minute variable, into this big ass plan, which still seems crazy. Where like, I hope we're gonna get an explanation for this, because how the hell is he does he know that Andor is like, knows all of this stuff and is like the perfect guy for this one job, where apparently they needed this one guy to do this one thing? Like, how was he so sure of Andor? And like, at what point? There had to be more. There has to be something where Luthen's story, the same as Andor's, was already going on, and we haven't gotten to the point yet where we find out what was he doing the second before he stepped on screen.
Yeah.
Still amazing, carrying the show every time he shows up. I mean, like, wow, this just went up so many levels in terms of quality.
And maybe that's why they used him so less in this episode, where they're like, dude, he's outshining all the actors, and we can't have a character. we can't have
this time
our other
everybody
characters.
else was so good.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah,
everybody redeemed themselves from last
everybody.
week, where I was like, last week they gave me a weird vibe where it's like, I don't know, they feel like characters that you can just kill off very easily. Where after this
Yeah.
episode, I'm like, no, each one of them, those deaths
Yeah.
is going to mean something.
They seem like
Except
disposable
maybe
side
Cinta.
characters that you didn't really need to know. Cinta, we're gonna find out because the only thing we find out about her is that she's she's stone cold and the most fearless in the whole group.
And she barely says
So
anything.
yeah, because she's stone cold, you know.
Hmm.
So that's the thing. Like, so that was my point about like a stone cold person who barely says anything and is like, it would be like Luthen was supposed to be like that, but he's actually stone cold for other reasons.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's episode 5. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? Any predictions? I guess it's pretty clear for next week. We had said what we're thinking, but
yeah.
I think we're both here excited. We kind of think this heist is gonna go all sorts of wrong, and if it's anything like episode 3, I think we're in for a nice, exciting ride.
Oh yeah,
Can't wait.
I'm excited because obviously we're gonna see like the whole space. Like obviously they're gonna try and go in and out of Eye of Aldani, with the meteor shower. So I'm excited to see what that looks
Yeah.
like in a TV show. First, it was just like a shootout, which was amazing, but it was still like very grounded. Now it's going to be like they're going to become like a little more fantastical and magical. So I'm curious to and very interested in seeing how that looks, and also like I know some cool crazy shit is going to happen. So
How big is
I'm
the body
prepared for
count
that.
going to be? My
Ooh, that's
guess,
going to be pretty
at
big.
least 3 there, minimum.
Well, there was one only in the first thing with
No,
Timmy.
I
I
say
think
from
I
the
think
squad,
three.
at least 3.
Nemec for sure.
He's already gone in the
Vel,
first.
Vel, I think is going to sacrifice herself, and I
See,
think
I think
Skeen.
she's gonna make it, and I think it's going to be Skeen, Nemec, and our boy who was holding the flag. The it was like taking
Harriman.
charge. Yeah,
Oh yeah, because Terramin actually was the guy he looks like in Matrix. He's the first guy to get fucked, right, by Cypher with that machine gun, with
and
that
it
big
turns out he's alive.
blaster. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
All right.
let's see. I can't wait. I wish I could watch it right now.
Yeah.
But
Yes, I agree.
all right, let's call it over here
All
and
right.
come back for the next episode. Take us out, Shabs.
Yes. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. I know we tried to keep it short, but we just had a lot of shit to say about it. The episode is just so good. The story's good, so we had to do it. And thanks for tuning in. Leave us all your feedback, all your comments. If you can't comment, email us with feedback if you have. We're always trying to looking to improve, and like, subscribe. Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, I think, Amazon Music, and give us 5-star rating if you can, if you like it, and stay tuned for more. And thanks for tuning in.
Come on. See you next time.
See you next time, guys. Peace.